Hello, everybody. Welcome to Reaction Shots for October. I am joined by marvelous people this month for the best month, probably of the year, October. I'm joined by favorite of the series here, Matthew Walden. Just some guy, you know.
Hey there. Thanks for having me back.
Anytime. No, of course. You told me to just say some guy, but I got to plug Better Than Speed, your podcast at least. And then my old college buddy, Mark, I don't know. Yeah, well, you're my screen. So Mark, right below me here, we met at film school back in Chicago. And apparently you saw one of my bands play and I had short hair. long ago. But you're a lecturer, a professor, an archivist, a writer, and you run a thing that I love called Wayward Cinema, which is kind of an art house film gathering thingamabob that used to happen in the before times.
BC, before COVID.
Before COVID, yeah. I remember some favorites of mine that fit in with today's topic of folk horror. You introduced me. I watched in somebody's yard the original Wicker Man, and I fell in love. That movie is amazing.
Incredible.
Watching it outdoors is the way to go.
Yeah.
That's an outdoorsy movie.
It was wonderful. Sitting on the grass, watching people get burned up. Awesome. Spoiler alert for 1970s movie. Yeah.
You've had plenty of time to see it.
Yeah. But yeah. Also, the original Suspiria. I was just listening to the soundtrack to the new Suspiria while I was preparing the notes for this episode. A couple people mentioned Suspiria, actually. I wonder if that counts as folk horror. Kind of, yeah. You're in with a coven of witches. It's got way different vibes. Way different vibes. But anyway, before we hop into folk horror... Oh, yeah, and Michael Huber, of course. Consummate gentleman. Beautiful co-host here.
Sup?
Your hair's getting so long, dude.
Dude, check your review. I'm coming for you.
It's a good look. You look like a action star.
You do.
You know what I mean? You look like the third movie in of an action star.
I was
John
literally
You rock the tank top.
Yeah. I was literally just gonna
bloodied up
say
tank
you're like Tom Cruise Mission Impossible 2 right now, like when he's got the long hair. Shout out to the Mr. Sunday Movies Caravan of Garbage series. They just watched the original 3 Mission Impossibles and it was a fun time. Anyway, before
1 and 3, 10 out of 10.
1 and 3, very good. 2, not good. I want to rewatch it though. It's been too long. This is already going to be a long podcast, I could tell. But before we get into the topic at hand, I usually like to just ask you if you've seen anything recently that you liked. Matthew, have you seen anything recently that you liked? Off-topic stuff? Because we'll get into all the on-topic stuff.
Yes, I have. I rewatched a movie I did not like in high school, and I ended up liking it this time, which is really fun when you get a little bit older and you can reappraise something.
Yeah.
It was Tetsuo Iron Man.
Oh, yeah.
Tsukamoto. When I saw that when I was 17, and it was a little too much for me. It was a little too shocking. I was like, I don't know. I can't go this deep. This is beyond my boundaries. And in high school, I liked some weird shit, but that was too far for me.
I was going to say, I'm surprised to hear you say that. I didn't know you had boundaries.
Had limits, yeah. I've got a few. You have to go far out to find them. But
Screws through the eyes and stuff. That's the line.
Yeah, there's this box set of the director's work that just came out, and I'm a sucker for a good box set. So I picked it up and rewatched Tetsuo Iron Man, and it's incredible. I don't know if the culture's in a different place or I'm in a different place, but it hit the right way right now. It's like Eraserhead on a lot of meth. It's just completely revved up. It's got a cool Cronenberg mixed with technology type feeling where the flesh is blending with steel and iron, and it's really hyperkinetic, so quickly edited, and it has a great sense of humor. It's really funny. Right. And then when I was younger, I just got creeped out by it and grossed out by it, and I didn't see the humor in it. Now that I caught that wave, it was really fun and enjoyable and zany and creative. So give it a second shot. Have any of the three of you seen it?
I've seen it. I watched it.
Did you like it?
Yeah, I watched it in college. And so I was in my middle period of turning hard, being jaded, losing my soft, gooey core, and just becoming a shell, a husk of a human being. So, yeah, I was in a transformation just like Tetsuo went through in that movie. But yeah, it's good. I was getting into like Ichi the Killer and Audition and stuff around that same time. So it was a troubling sequence of events, to be sure.
That's like the black tar violent Japanese movie.
Mm-hmm.
It's like the real hard stuff.
Yeah.
That's funny. Well, yeah, this time I really enjoyed it, so I'm going to see more from that director. And then I've been watching some TV shows, some spooky TV shows for the season. Been watching Ultra Q, which is a Japanese Twilight Zone style show. One of the special effects guys from Godzilla, he had like maybe a 30, 40 episode show called Ultra Q. It eventually evolved into Ultra Man, which is probably more popular.
Yeah, I've
and
heard of that,
well-known.
I feel like.
But this is more like the Twilight Zone with Godzilla special effects, and each episode has some kind of monster of the week, but it's really fun and creepy and goofy in that like old school watch at a drive-in way.
Love it.
So, you know, I think in Halloween, I've heard you talk about this, Huber, before, where you're like, you got to build up to the harder stuff
Gotta
later
ramp up.
in the season. Yeah, and sometimes if you have a significant other who doesn't really get into all the, like, super hardcore scary stuff, you have the little, like, Charlie Brown's It's the Great Pumpkin that you mix in. Those kind of things. So, I've been watching Ultra Q, this Japanese Twilight Zone, and Dark Shadows, which the old show of Dark Shadows, the old soap opera.
Yeah.
And that's so much fun. So that's been my menu lately.
Huber, what have you liked recently?
I warned you last time, Ian. Vampire Diaries. The Vampire
You warned me.
Diaries universe. Vampire Diaries, the originals, and legacies. I'm not kidding around. This has become one of my favorite franchises of all time. It sounds so lame. It was on like CW or something. You know?
I was wondering. Yeah.
I
Dude.
buy it. CW's got some secretly good stuff. The
yeah.
100 had a couple good seasons in there.
I heard it
Dude.
ended poorly, the 100?
It did end very poorly. Yes, my wife is upset. It was her favorite show of all time until the final season, actually.
The
100.
headline I saw was just, the 100 pulls a Game of Thrones. And I was like,
Yep.
uh-oh.
Totally. I just really want to give a shout out to Vampire Diaries and the originals. It's amazing. The lore is incredible, and they use practical effects, and the lighting is so good. Like for a TV show, I can't imagine the budget being crazy, but like they pull off the coolest shit, dude. Like these vampires are decapitating people. People are burning alive. Like it's just really cool. It deals with like. Then you have the originals, which is like the original vampires that are like thousands of years old.
Cool.
And like there's like very specific ways you can kill them. They're immortal. Just a fun time, dude. There's witches and werewolves. I love this franchise so much. The originals is a spin-off of that, and then Legacies is like in the future, the next generation. So it's like they go to a academy for like gifted people, so there's like werewolves and witches and vampires like all at this school. It's so amazing. And like people from the previous series are like guest star on Legacies. Like
You're kind of getting me into this.
I'm so obsessed with this whole franchise. Like found myself crying at some parts. Like dude, the way it deals with death, because some people go to like the afterlife, and it's like you pass on, like it hits hard, and it's also really easy to binge watch, all on Netflix. It's such an easy breezy show that has like depth and real stakes and like awesome effects.
Real stakes.
Yep.
Ah.
Nice. Yep. That's it. Love it so much.
Can I ask you, are they able to be in the sun? Because that's something that's driving me crazy with the evolution of the vampire genre. I'm sorry.
Yeah,
They
so the
can't be in the
witches are the strongest beings in this universe. They're OP as shit, dude. Like if you're a vamp, they can do a spell where you're just like, you have a brain aneurysm and you can't even move because they just like mess with your, legit, they give you a repeated brain aneurysm. So what they do is they make rings. They're daylight rings. So only a witch can make a daylight ring. So it's like a rare artifact. So
this.
only a few select vampires can get those rings. You gotta have it in with a witch. Dude, it's so sick.
I love that.
Are witches immortal?
Witches are not immortal, but they're so freaking strong, dude. They're
so you got a trade-off. I was trying to think. I was like, well, I want to be a vampire, and then I was like, well, maybe I want to be a witch.
Yeah.
But if you're not immortal, that's what I'm after. So.
Yeah, but dude, then there's some witches that are like maybe messing with some immortality, like some like anime body swapping shit. Like, dude, it gets crazy.
If I could body swap, you know I would.
Yeah. It's so fun.
Mark, have you liked anything lately?
Well, I mean, a lot. I'm going to stay on theme, though, with horror. I'm just also I want to respond to what Matthew said about getting people who are not into horror to watch horror. Because I had an interesting experience recently where my partner hadn't seen the original Candyman. And, the remake is going to come out, who knows when, right? With what's going on with the article. And he was like terrified throughout the first like half of that movie. He was like gripping me. He was like, "Why am we doing this?" He was covering his eyes. And by the second half, he was laughing out loud. I was like, "That is the best way to do horror. You are terrified to death, and then you are amused to death. Like that is the way to experience it." So that was a great. I had already seen it as a kid, and I love Candyman. I love Candyman 2. I think that one's in New Orleans, and it's like bonkers. Also, kind of on theme, not exactly horror, but cult, is The Vow. I don't know if anyone's been watching the Nixium documentary.
I watched the first couple episodes, actually. Yeah, I watched.
Ooh, I want to see that. I want to see it. I have to brace myself.
Yeah, no, definitely. I binged it. I mean, it's not. You should not binge it. I will already say that. No, but like I love these cult docuseries like Wild Wild Country. I'm sure you guys have all seen that, right? The Netflix one that was out a few years ago. And I love that these cult docuseries will take you from being like, no, this sounds really cool. Like this sounds really utopian, but like these people have found their bliss. Like yes, to them being like, oh no, I'm not doing that. Like, I love that it takes you from, like, straight up, like, I want to join to, like, straight up, like, no way in fucking hell am I joining this. So I don't know. I love it. So it takes you through that. And it's interesting because it starts out kind of retrospectively and it's got a lot of good footage because this documentary filmmaker was filming a bunch of, like, promotional content and stuff for the cult or the organization. And then it turns into kind of a thriller, and it's about this woman who was on Dynasty randomly trying to save, and she's also like British or like aristocracy. She's trying to save her daughter from the kind of grips of the cult leader, Keith Raniere. So it kind of is interesting switch too, and it kind of, anyway, so it's a really fascinating cult docuseries I'd highly recommend.
What's it called? The Vow?
The Vow,
yeah.
The Vow. Okay, dude, I'm so in.
HBO's been crushing it lately.
Awesome. More HBO content,
Cool. I've actually been watching a lot of HBO lately too. The Third Day I'm just like all about right now, which is what gave me the idea for this theme, folk horror, and of course my love for Wicker Man and various other folk horror entries. But also I May Destroy You. I'm halfway through. Mark, I assume you've seen that. Have you seen that one?
Brilliant.
It's incredible. It's
brilliant. Yeah.
It's difficult to watch. I actually haven't watched an episode in maybe a week just because it's been so crazy with stuff going on. But like, man, it normalizes a lot of cool stuff. It approaches things very honestly. The characters things will happen. There's a thing that happens to the main character, and I was like mad at her for not knowing it was bad, and then the show turns that around in such an amazing way. Just like stuff that happens is so incredible. That show, I May Destroy You, HBO.
On a hard to watch scale, from like 0 to 10, how hard is it to watch?
Well, it's not hard to watch in a Tetsuo Iron Man sort of way. It's more hard to watch in like just kind of 2020 feelings.
Yeah. I heard a lot of people say they watched it and had to relive some unpleasant stuff. That it's a great show, but it's going to kind of take you through the ringer a little bit.
And the thing that's so one of the best successes and why it's so hard to watch is because it endears you to the main characters and their experiences in such a way that even if you haven't suffered certain traumas like they are, you go along with them and you experience their realizations and stuff along with them, and it makes you really sit in it with them, in a way that I don't think I've seen a show do before, and it's a really good show.
It's a show that's very much about the kind of micro and macro ways that we're in many ways complicit in the culture of rape culture and kind of different kinds of sexual violation, and that we don't realize it. And I think it kind of is opening people's eyes to that, and doing it by not a melodramatic narrative that is about the rape being this but actually not like a kind of suspenseful thriller where it's like who did it or like will we find out, but it's actually about it's not melodramatic. It actually it weaves in kind of comedy and moments of just kind of naturalistic conversation among these different characters that are of color and of different kinds of class, and also in children of immigrants. So it's an interesting way that it weaves in different kinds of difference as well.
Yeah, like the main character. So many other shows, when dealing with a victim of something like this, like they're just that. They're just a victim of that. Whereas this person, she's a person, like she's still a person, like that doesn't define her.
She's trying to write a fucking book. She's trying to write a book.
Yeah. Oh man. That stuff stresses me out too, like her just ignoring deadlines and shit. I'm just like, dude,
I can't handle dedeadline stress.
I know.
In movies or games, it stresses me out in games.
Me too, dude.
Like StarCraft or something. I'm like, I can't handle it.
Persona 5, that kind of stuff, where it's like you only have 5 days and you get to do one thing per day. I'm just like, there's not enough time. I also watched the season premiere of Fargo, which I thought was cool. I'm a couple behind now on that.
Is this the Chris Rock season?
Chris Rock season, yeah.
How is it? Do you like it?
Good so far. It's cool. I mean, it's.
I never watched the Ewan McGregor season. Was that one?
Yeah, season 3 I didn't finish. Is that season? Okay. Yeah, that's season 3. I didn't finish season 3.
Okay. Four is
no
really
reason.
good so far, then.
Yeah, so the first episode was cool. It's a lot of just kind of setup. So we'll see where it goes. Also, in keeping with things called Fargo. Does not take place in Fargo, principally, at least so far. So,
who else is in it? It's Chris Rock and someone else, though, right?
Jason Schwartzman's in there.
Timothy Oliphant?
He might show up later.
Yeah, I think so.
I think he wasn't in the first episode, but yeah, I love me some Timothy Oliphant. I heard he's rumored to be in season 2 of The Mandalorian. Is that true?
Yes, I did hear that.
I am in for that. I've also I've also just been watching like an assload of Taskmaster clips on YouTube. That show is great. British, I guess, game show. It's like a panel show, but it's they're set upon completing various outlandish tasks, and then the two hosts like make fun of them for doing poorly at it, and it's a funny show. And they're like all comedians, so it's like, it's like, I don't know, hide this pineapple on your person and like, or like balance the host using nothing but these weird items on this seesaw, like random stuff like that, and then I haven't rewatched any, but I watched the Red Letter Media review of Twin Peaks Firewalk with Me last night, as I was feeling super dizzy and just watching those. And it's just got me in like a whole Twin Peaks vibe now. Like I'm just thinking about Twin Peaks all day. So,
nice.
Yeah, and everything else.
I think I sent you that Marco Polo of the like waterfall, right?
Oh, yeah.
For me, that was like a pilgrimage. Like I had to go to the actual inn where Twin Peaks takes place.
I mean to, yeah. I mean to go up there someday. Then I just watched a buttload of stuff for this episode. So without further ado, let's hop in. And also, Matthew, remind me, I think after the favorites, you have a certain expertise that maybe we can talk about if you want.
Sure, absolutely. It never seemed quite appropriate before, but I think this is the episode.
I think this is the episode, and I have a comment picked out for the end of the favorites that sort of mirrors my feelings about certain movies by a certain director. And I think that'll lead into that maybe, so we'll see. All right, but yeah, so the format for the show usually is I just have a bunch of comments from our patrons on patreon.com/easyallies. $7 and up, they are in the film club, and they get to comment, and we use their comments in the show. And so I just asked, first and foremost, pretty easy question, what's your favorite folk horror? And I'll start by reading their comments, and if one pops up that is one of your favorites, or if you just have something to say about one of them, hop right in. Happy Gaming says one of their favorites in recent memory has to be The Babadook, and not to mention The Witch. I love The Witch. I've been too scared to watch Babadook.
Why is it two V's? Why can't it
old
just be
timey? It's old timey.
It's when do you do soda? What's the difference between a soda like a shop? SHOPPE.
A couple hundred years.
Yeah, a couple hundred years or location.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't know when that changed in earnest. Like when we stopped doing extra P's and throwing E's on stuff. Maybe like 1890s? I don't know. Mark, do you know?
No, I don't know, and I love that you're trying to guess that what it is.
I assume you know everything, Mark. Just be aware of that.
The Babadook I did not like the first time I saw it, and then I rewatched it a few years later, and I absolutely loved it.
Oh, cool. What changed for you? I'm curious.
Expectations, like horror can sometimes be the victim of too high of expectations or different expectations.
Mm-hmm.
If you're expecting jump scares and crazy horror, and then all of a sudden it's this deep, slow-paced, introspective.
Yeah.
So I think I went in with the wrong mood and vibe, and I was like, oh, it was okay. And then, of course, second time reevaluating it and like watching it deeper and watching it like prepared for what it was, I just loved it even more. For sure.
I love it too. That director Jennifer Kent, she's a genius. I will have to say though, I did not find the Babadook very scary. I found it kind of fun and manic, like Beetlejuice.
Oh,
but
weird.
my wife hated it. She thought it was terrifying and stressful. So that's a good barometer of. You might find it scary, Ian.
Well, yeah.
You actually reminded me of the first time I didn't like it is because they show the Babadook early. They show it pretty early, and then it like sucked all the horror and the tension out of it for me.
Like Darkness Falls.
Yeah, but then again, going in again, it's like, okay, I'm ready. So, yeah, when you show your creature too soon, I think.
Michael, I get what you're saying because I kind of want to rewatch Babadook because I didn't love it the first time when I saw it in the theater.
Yeah.
I was in my graduate program and I just kept thinking like, oh, this is so Freudian, like being so annoyed by that, like the Oedipal anxiety of it all and like the mother and son trying to, like get their relationship solidified and the father just keeps like interrupting that and disrupting that. But I think maybe I need to rewatch it. And I especially need to rewatch it with this kind of like the way that the queer community claimed the Babadook and these kind of
right.
that I didn't quite understand, and maybe I still don't. So I want to rewatch it because I'm sure people picked up on something that I didn't at the time because I was just so pissed off.
I was thinking about that the other day, and I was not sure if that was because of something in the movie or because in real life. I'm trying to remember the origins because I think something in real life, like. Filed it under gay and lesbian cinema or something, just at random.
I think it was a Netflix category.
Netflix,
maybe.
yeah, but it had nothing. It was like a misfile, but then everyone just glommed onto it.
I love seeing the Babadook at Pride parades.
Yeah.
You see him like, on signs and everything. It's such a strange turn of events. I love it though.
I turned to someone I was dating at that point, whenever it was a few years ago, and I was like, "What the hell is it with this?" And he goes, "Oh, well, look at those limp wrists." I'm like, seriously? That's what we're doing? That's what we're doing now. Our queer hero is now just someone with limp wrists.
Yeah, it's 2020, Mark. We got to take what we can get.
Like, come on. I know, right? Thank you, Ian, for that support.
Eric Sayer, I know this is one of your favorites, Huber. And I just finished watching it today. Eric Sayer brings up my favorite has to be The Wailing, a film all about superstition, tradition, and how disinformation can lead to true horror. It has one of the bleakest endings I've ever seen in a film. I didn't sleep well for a week after watching it. Also, Maceface seconds The Wailing. Not only one of my favorite horror movies, but favorite movie. I know Huber is a fan.
I love it so much.
They also bring up 2018 Suspiria, which I love, which we can talk about afterwards. But just finished The Wailing today. Talk to us about The Wailing, Huber. Well, tell us what it is first, and then I could talk about it.
So it is like small town Korean horror thriller, and like a Japanese outsider comes, and there's like murders going on, and then shit escalates. You have like the detective investigating the whole thing, and just like weird occurrences kind of happen throughout. There's some weird comedic
Yeah, I was gonna say it's kind of funny at times. Like
there's parts that are really funny, and then there are parts that are just so extreme, and then there are parts that are just really, really spooky. It's got a nice balance of like genres and emotions.
Yeah.
And it's just like it's like really long too. It's like a 2.5 hour epic.
What'd you say, Mark?
What era is this from? What
this is a few years old now. It's probably 2017.
Okay.
Yeah, I want to say 17, 16.
Okay. Cool.
Yeah, just finished it today. Started it yesterday, but then got busy. We had to do our stream, so I had to finish it after. And I wasn't about to finish it at night. But yeah, and it definitely qualifies as folk horror. But the pacing and stuff, which it has in common with many of these other great folk horrors. But like, it's one of those movies where I finished it and I was like, what are we trying to say here?
Yeah,
like,
that ending, I had no idea how to parse the meaning. It seemed like very xenophobic with the devil and the picture. And I was like, I'm going to have to think about that for a while. Maybe I need to know more about the situation and the politics to be able to understand it. But it just seemed like it was like outsiders are bad.
Right. Is this movie just racist? Like, or what are we saying?
I haven't seen this film, but I can tell. I mean, didn't Japan occupy Korea?
Yes.
During
my brother's wife.
The aftermath of that.
So yeah, there's definitely it's talking about that. I think, and that's I think the broader context of like, what is this really about? And I think you hit the nail on the head. Yeah.
Yeah, my brother's wife is Japanese and like watched it as well because I told my brother all about it and like told me kind of just about the tension between Korea and Japan. And
but I guess in a way we're sort of spoiling it kind of, but like the movie does an amazing job, especially as an American viewer in 2020, I think, of playing back and forth on your expectations and biases. Like I flip-flopped on who I thought was the bad guy like 4 times. I was like, well, certainly it's not this. Oh, maybe it is. No, it can't be. It's this one. But just really cool build of tension, and it's one of those movies that, like many of these folk horror movies, just expert crescendo to madness, like where you can taste that something nasty is about to happen, and it's wonderful.
I love that director. His other movies, he did The Yellow Sea, which I think is one of the most underrated movies of the last while. It's funny, James Gunn did his like top 10 films of the decade or of all time, and he gave a shout out to The Yellow Sea. And then before that, he did The Chaser, which is like a thriller, serial killer thriller. Just really like.
Oh, I didn't realize that was him. I saw The Chaser. That one's a bit intense. Yeah. Sick in a couple ways.
he just nails tension. So, really like his movies. Big fan.
Writing these down. I've never seen these. Cool.
Yeah. I literally just thought of this. I hadn't thought of that. I'm kicking myself now for not having thought of him sooner. But Michael Haneke as a director makes folk horror even when he's not making folk horror. I feel like
real life, just
like Cachet. I feel like it kind of is, and like I mean certainly The White Ribbon, just like straight up Oh God, the White Ribbon is so good. And funny games, kind of too. Jeez. Anyway,
Last thing about the Wailing is I love too that it's just ambiguous enough. I love that about a horror movie.
Oh, yeah,
where it
yeah.
doesn't things are left unexplained. There's lapses in time. It almost seems like a fever dream.
yeah.
It's just piecing it together is fun. I like
Well,
that.
that I think is a common thread in this genre, this subgenre too, of loss of time and confusion and mounting confusion. The Third Day plays with that incredibly well. I don't know.
You told me to watch that. I gotta start.
Yeah, I episode 4 just came out
Yeah.
last week.
I'm caught up.
You're caught up? Okay, I was wondering if any of you had a chance.
Cool.
Matthew, have you
I've
watched
been on
it?
the Raised by Wolves.
I haven't watched it
train.
yet.
I think you would really like it. Oh, I haven't watched Raised by Wolves yet because
No,
I don't
I
have
didn't.
Max because Roku fucking sucks.
I'm not gonna tell you who.
No, there's a way to do it. We'll talk about it later, Ian.
Okay,
There's a
tell
way.
me later.
Yeah.
I'm not gonna.
But
I'm not gonna say who it is, but there's a character on Raised by Wolves that might be my favorite character of 2020.
Ooh,
Whoa.
Pretty good show, great character.
okay.
Yeah.
But so as the academic of the bunch, I just want to pause and I want to ask Ian, especially because you just said funny games is folk horror. But I kind of want to ask, I want to open it up to the room. How are we defining folk horror?
To me, I mean, funny games is haha folk horror sort of, but to me, I mean, the stuff that's easily, obviously folk horror are
Yeah.
fish out of water on an island, can't do anything about it, tra la la, obviously.
Yes.
But then things where you have to get a little looser with it is because one of the staples I think is the fish out of water element, and
Yeah.
even stuff like the Wailing where it's their own hometown.
Yeah.
The thing they're dealing with is out of water, so that's still maintained. So maybe that might be the requisite, but basically it's fish out of water into a community or situation that is beyond their ken, beyond what.
And is rural.
Right. Yeah.
Kind of. Yeah.
Does
Yeah.
folk lore play into it?
Oftentimes.
Yeah, I think it certainly does.
Yeah.
Yeah, if you think of an old silent movie like Faust, Murnau's Faust, which is one of my favorite silent movies ever. It's got that classic image of Faust. You've probably seen images of it where he's opens his cape over a town. And it's
yeah.
got
Yep.
people
Yeah.
riding on skeleton horses
Yeah,
that look
so
stop motion
good.
animation.
So good.
Those are very classic clips from that movie, but that was based on German folklore about Dr. Faustus. And so I think folklore definitely 100% influences it. A lot of times you see, in folk horror, if it's from the British or European angle, you'll often see a battle between paganism and Christianity.
Yeah.
Another early one of those silent movies. Has anybody seen Haxan? That's on
Yes.
Criterion Collection. Haxan. Yeah, it's a documentary from a Swedish filmmaker in the 1920s, and it just recreates all of these instances of witchcraft and kind of ties it to persecution. They're these are the stereotypes of witches and covens and paganism, and here's how people are persecuted because of those beliefs. So it's kind of forward thinking a little bit for the 1920s. It's not so great on the issue of mental illness. It's the witches were actually crazy, so we should be compassionate to them and put them in the institutions. So old stuff always has problems, but yeah, I've noticed a lot. Most of the British, European, American folk horror has to do with the tension between paganism and Christianity.
Yeah.
There's usually burning. Someone gets burned somewhere, and over half of
You
the
gotta-
folk horror movies,
you gotta
I've seen,
burn
it ends in
somebody.
fire.
Yeah, certainly.
Yeah. A lot of times women, unfortunately, are the ones getting burned in these movies, but sometimes it's vampires
Except
get
for-
burned, castles get burned. There's going to be some burning happening.
And then
Possessions,
I think with, as we see in the Wailing and with Hausu, it ends up dealing with malevolent spirits and stuff and that kind of a thing. But yeah, that stuff definitely plays in almost across the board. In the case of the White Ribbon, it's more just I guess it's stifling belief systems versus like youth. I don't know. Like,
well, it's a kind of isolated community, right?
Right.
And that's another theme that plays in, right? Is a kind of isolation or remoteness of these locales. So yeah, I think of White Ribbon. I think of very much like this, and it being also kind of national allegory in a way, or kind of anticipation of what's to come in White Ribbon. But
set right before World War I, Germany, right?
I think it's right before World War I.
Yeah, I think so too.
My memory serves me right. Yeah.
Right before we started filming this, I asked Matthew and Huber if Straw Dogs counts.
Gosh.
And
I think it does. It grows out of those British movies in the 70s. What year was Straw Dogs? Do you remember?
70 something,
69
right?
or 70. Yeah.
It's right in the mix there. Of the ones we talked about earlier, Ian, there was the Blood on Satan's Claw.
71.
And Witchfinder General that came out around that era. These British movies about paganism and Satanism, and
I watched Blood on Satan's Claw for this. Yeah, it was.
That one was fun.
Sure.
Witchfinder General is very intense. That's Vincent Price.
Yeah,
and he's playing sort of like this guy who loves to torture people under the guise of religion. And he goes from town to town, finds somebody who he accuses of being a witch, stabs them or burns them. It feels like a very early kind of torture porn style movie. That one was a little too much for me. He's kind of like a Cormac McCarthy villain, like the No Country for Old Men, just kind of wandering the land, hurting people.
More of an archetype than a human being.
Yeah, but when you watch something like that and that kind of rawness in the British countryside of just people invading other people's homes and torturing them, Straw Dogs definitely feels of a piece with that. Yeah.
Straw Dogs, like
uncomfortable.
Straw Dogs is to me as Tetsuo Iron Man was to you. I saw it much too young, and was not
I'm
prepared.
Still too young for it.
I didn't trust humans or women or men or anything for like a good 6 months after I watched Straw Dogs.
There's something about this like 70s moment kind of coming after or kind of still during the counterculture movement.
Yeah.
That of course it wasn't just in the United States, right? I mean, you find obviously examples of it in Europe and then even Japan. So there's something maybe about a reaction, a kind of reactionary, conservative reaction to the kind of counterculture, quasi-paganism of that movement. Of free love and stuff. So there's something there that maybe, I don't know, maybe good to tease out.
I think
that's a good observation.
That's a great observation, and I think you've hit the nail on the head of what I was about to say too. Is you're totally right. The films, because the films of this ilk from the 70s era seem very pro-Christian, like organized religion, and anti-pagan. Whereas now, I think we're in like a revisionist period with things like The Witch, which don't necessarily seem pro-religion, And it's a funny kind of.
We should talk about Wicker Man because from the 70s, that may be an exception.
Wicker Man might be the.
We'll get there.
Well, let's jump into Wicker Man because I love 1973, right? Wicker Man. 73. Oh God, that movie's just so. I'm indebted to you for showing it to me in the way that I got to see it. But, because I was gonna say I don't recall the main character. I don't think is religious. He is,
yes. He's very pious. He is a God-fearing man.
Oh, right. But his job is he's like an insurance investigator, right?
He's there. No, he's an officer of the law. He's there to investigate this missing girl.
Right,
course, sorry, spoiler alert, but of course he's been lured there to be their sacrifice so that their crops can grow for the next season or whatever it is.
Yeah.
And I think that the film does a really amazing job of kind of making this kind of like pious guy look like there are sirens.
Fitting.
Dude. Kind of look like sort of this like wimpy, like kind of dick kind of loser compared to, this town that has a kind of vibrant, this kind of vibrant pagan culture that you're kind of, I don't know, I guess depending on what kind of spectator you are, historically, what kind of spectator is watching. I think that, I think the film does a really good job of making you go, I kind of want to be a part of that community. This guy's kind of lame. But I want to hear other thoughts.
Yeah, that's one of the things I was wondering. Were these movies, how many of them were reactionary and how many were saying, hey, the paganism's actually kind of fun? Like Wicker Man, for example, like maybe you could view it like Inglorious Bastards, where like, oh, they get to take their revenge. And so if you're on their side, there's something kind of thrilling about watching it. Like for me when I was a kid, I just grew up in a religious family in the 80s where like the satanic panic stuff was happening, and you know they were very Christian, so our church believed demons could possess people. My parents would read books and they would think demons could possess us, so as a kid I was freaked out that a demon was going to possess me. So when you see like one of these like folk horror yeah, when you see one of these folk horror movies, like The Witch, for example,
Yes.
I really connected to the heroine of that movie because she's going through all this like psychological torment about her Christian religion, and her family gets a little wacky as a result. And then you have this coven of witches who welcome her in, and it's almost a triumphant feeling.
Do you want to
towards
live
the end of that
deliciously?
movie? Yeah, and you know maybe they cook up a baby in a stew, so that's not so
You're
good.
gonna have to cook
You
a few
shouldn't do
babies,
that.
you know.
But there is something fun about a movie that delights in crossing those boundaries, even if it's not endorsing the behavior of the pagans, but somehow flipping the script and making it feel like this is a happy ending if the pagans are succeeding.
Well, and I see movies like that, like Wicker Man 73 and The White Ribbon and The Witch and stuff, not as an indictment of like religion on the whole maybe, but as an indictment of like such stringent punishing, like just like oppressive religion, because like the family in The Witch are kicked out of their Calvinist who are very, you know, strict to begin with. They're kicked out for being too strict. And you know you're strict if you're getting kicked out of the Calvinists or whatever, for being the Puritans, for being too strict, you know. Leo S.
Conform to that too, right? Because White Ribbon is all about that.
Yeah, White Ribbon is all about
the
like
cost of repression, right?
Yeah.
For
and
sure.
I love that. I mean, I grew up in a very religious upbringing as well, and felt fairly stifled by it personally, and so I can relate to it in that kind of way. Through weirdly no fault of my parents. Like my mom was a pastor, but she was actually super chill. I just kind of like put it on myself in a weird way. I don't know. But Leo S. Luna had an interesting comment that is very much along these lines, bringing in also, they say, I guess Rosemary's Baby and The Omen might count too. They're both based on cults. The only thing is that they're worldwide in size. They say they love those anti-religion movies for some reason, The Witch included. They're from Costa Rica, one of many Catholic-based Latin American countries, so expect many morale and controversies surrounding these types of movies. I was taught to go to church and school and feel guilty for most things I do in life, but when my teenage years happened, I got atheist for personal reasons and things that led me to disbelieve. There's an amount of friends who truly believers, and I respect that. It's just not for me. That's why I love The Witch. Many Christians and Catholics alike despise paganism, but they never realize that the excess of religion is the cause of paganism itself oftentimes. Or at least certainly in these movies, it seems to be offered as like an antidote for oppressive. And again, not to say, you know, if you're religious at home listening or watching, that's totally fine. But the depictions in these movies are oppressive intentionally.
Yeah, what's the goat's name? Like Philip?
Black Phillip?
Black Phillip,
Black
yeah.
Phillip, just like, hey, come on over. Basically, right? That's what it
Pretty
amounts
much.
to. It's like, hey, come on over.
Sign this book.
Some of the movies that fit into this category, though, definitely take the opposite approach.
Absolutely.
Where, like, oh, the pagans are out of control.
Blood on Satan's Claw, for example.
This is an example of like mass psychology going awry and people getting whipped up into a furor, like the Wailing has with its shaman.
Yeah.
God,
and
that scene.
Midsummer, definitely.
Yeah.
I wouldn't say that the movie takes a stance quite in favor of the group. The group's pretty. They're kind of scary with some of their rituals.
But it sort of does.
Yeah, it does.
It's sort of, at the end, it sort of does. We're spoiling the shit out of everything. Sorry, everybody. But yeah, it kind of does.
But I think Matthew your point's right that it really depends on where you kind of stand, right? Ideologically or spiritually, maybe even in terms of who you're gonna kind of ally with or ally with in these films. And Midsummer is a really good example of that. We don't have to get to it yet, but I'm very excited to talk about Midsummer.
We'll build up to it. There's going to be a Midsummer Hereditary section coming up. We're crescendoing to the nightmare that are
Hereditary.
But kind of along these lines, I recently watched a movie called Apostle, starring Dan Stevens, which is on Netflix.
Gareth Evans, dude, The Raid.
Yeah, dude. Yeah, I went on a little rabbit hole about Gareth Evans after I watched Apostle, because I was like, he's just like some Welsh dude directing The Raid? Like, I always thought, I never looked into who directed The Raid. I always thought they were just Indonesian movies or something, but no, they're kind of a multicultural thing, which I really appreciate. But Apostle is interesting because it's it kind of toes the line in an interesting way. And the movie's it's not certainly the best that we'll talk about today, but it was fine. But the one thing I liked about it is the main character, played by Dan Stevens, had already lost his faith prior to the movie. He stopped believing before this happened. And then this movie, which, try not to spoil it, but it gets a little more supernatural than most of these, overtly anyway. It's an interesting interplay between a person who's lost their faith, encountering a new faith, and then sort of like coming into a new faith, which is a mixture of their old faith and this new, very interesting, weird kind of take on it. That I thought was interesting. You don't see very often. Makes me think about The Lighthouse in a weird way, but yeah, I don't know. Nobody else has seen Apostle, so
No,
I want to. It's long, right? It's
2 hours.
2 hours, I think. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Another one that I saw on Netflix, or I didn't see it, but it was mentioned a few times, was The Ritual, which is on Netflix, but I haven't seen that one yet.
Yeah. I think I saw that one. It's a cult film, right?
I think so.
Like where people live in the hills, they bring their friends over for a dinner party.
That's The Invitation.
That's The Invitation.
Which I have seen.
Love The Invitation.
Invitation's great.
Let's talk about The Invitation, because The Invitation is dope.
Is that folk? I don't think that's folk horror.
think
but
that's
that's
folk
cool.
Not folk horror at all.
It's not folk horror, but
cool.
it's a cult movie.
Yeah, it is. Yeah.
Which is great.
No, I have to say, I think that movie should be remade. I think that the acting and the dialogue is really bad in certain scenes, but the whole concept and the conceit of it is brilliant.
It's tonally inconsistent for sure.
And I want to see someone else remake it and do a better job at it personally.
I'm percolating. I've been percolating an episode theme for reaction shots, but I don't quite have it yet. But it's something along the lines of like mid to low budget sci-fi / suspense movies, like The Invitation, like The Endless, like Primer, like Coherence.
Does Upstream Color fit?
Well,
in there?
God, Jesus Lord, Upstream Color, the greatest movie ever made. Yeah.
Chronos.
Deep cuts.
I love
Chronos.
Upstream Color.
Yeah.
Did you see Amy's new movie? You're gonna.
I haven't seen it yet.
What's it called? Die Tomorrow? Or
Yeah,
She's
she
Gonna
dies tomorrow or something. I haven't seen it yet.
Yeah. It's funny. It's got a good sense of humor.
Really? Yeah, I think I know some people who worked on it. So that's cool.
I don't like when horror is funny.
Well, this movie is not for you.
He's a military
it.
man and he wants a military meal.
Yeah. Comedic horror films? No.
What
No,
about
it's
what
not.
about Cabin in the Woods, Hubert? Come on.
Cabin in the Woods is great.
All right.
10 out of 10.
All right. What
All
about
right, you prove me wrong.
what about Army of Darkness 2?
You prove me wrong.
Or
Evil Dead. All right.
Evil
Sure.
Dead. Army
It
of Darkness.
depends on the funny.
Sure.
I agree with you. Sometimes I'm like not in the mood. Just like I don't want a band to sing funny songs. Just sing good songs. Don't be funny.
Dude, like that MGMT album that came out with Little Dark Age, and I loved Little Dark Age, but then the rest of the album was like a joke. It was like a joke album, and I was just like, this isn't what I signed on for. I don't want this.
Yeah, what?
Or maybe it just wasn't for me. I don't know. Ryan Ponder says Black Death from 2010, while not my favorite, is a fantastic horror film-esque, folk horror-esque film. starring Sean Bean, Eddie Redmayne, and Carice Van Houten. Essentially a medieval witch hunt movie with plenty of sketchy town folk and foreboding stuff. I don't think I've seen that one.
Fun one.
Is that good?
It's good. They nailed it. It's not like the best, but it's a really good time. Especially if you love Sean Bean. Like, I love...
Which I do.
Yeah. So sign up for that. And just atmosphere. It's got a good vibe. It's got a good atmosphere.
Cool.
There's something about horror movies that, like, when it's medieval and, like, rural, like so many of the movies we're talking about, like The Witch, there's just that extra sense of vulnerability. Like, The Witch is so terrifying because they're just, like, on this farm land area.
Yeah.
It's like anything could just walk up and harm you. So
there's a conceit in folk horror films, oftentimes not super well executed, where you the viewer find yourself wondering, why don't you leave? Why don't you leave?
Yeah.
And some movies like The Witch handle it really well because it's like they just can't. They don't have they're so destitute that they would just die if they tried to leave. It's like they have to stick to their dirt farm because they got to eat that dirt. Oh man.
I just read a review where someone really applauded the fact that The Third Man does a really good job at that.
The Third Day?
The Third Day, sorry.
Yeah.
Because he sees,
Nice.
he keeps seeing his son, right? He wants to figure out is his son on this island. And it was comparing it to the original Wicker Man, which said, he doesn't really have a good reason to stay. And I'm like, but if he's a pious character and he wants to do the right thing, he's going to find this child at all costs.
Right.
I was read by this review. I thought they misread the original one. And don't you dare mess with the original Wicker Man.
Yeah,
You know?
original Wicker Man, pretty great. But yeah, you've got to be duty bound. You've got to be trapped by some kind of strange mechanism, or you've got to be there for a reason that we don't know about. You know, like
I brought it up earlier in the year. Perfect time to throw it in. The Relic, not The Relic. Relic. My favorite horror movie of 2020. It's a newer movie. Came out this year on demand.
I've heard it's
exactly
very sad.
What you're talking about. A reason for being there. Like there, you're never questioning why. Like do this, do that. Why? It's like such an honest, awesome movie, dude. Relic. I cannot recommend that enough.
Ryan Ponder also brought up the original Woman in Black from '89. Ties for favorites with Wicker Man and The Witch and Midsummer. But The Woman in Black is so impossibly warm in spots. People are friendly, the town is bustling and lively, and this all provides such a stark contrast to the house across the bog. The newer Woman in Black, in my opinion, does not compare. Haven't seen either of them, but...
Yeah, I haven't heard. I'm intrigued. I want to see this now.
I guess I didn't realize, or maybe I knew that it was a remake, but...
Yeah.
Jeremy Ferris says, isn't necessarily folk horror, but Nosferatu the Vampire is a great daytime horror film. For those who haven't seen it, it's a pseudo-remake of Nosferatu, but when he gets to England, it turns out the ship he was sailing on is carrying the Black Plague. Many horror scenes are in the day, including the ending. Which
Is this the Herzog one that he's talking about? Because the Herzog one is great.
I've seen the Herzog one. It must be that. Yeah, I think it is that one.
Yeah, there's like hundreds of rats in that.
Yeah.
And the soundtrack is beautiful. It's this German, like sort of weird spiritual mystical band, Popol Vuh, I think is the name of them. They do a lot of Herzog soundtracks.
Popol Vuh, yeah.
Yeah, but
Ooh.
God, the music is like transcendent. Yeah, it feels like a
Super
good
cool.
acid trip is what the music sounds like. It's a cool pairing with vampires. And like I've been debating whether or not vampires count as folk horror because there's a little bit of folklore there. I think that the Hammer Horror Studio from Britain, they transposed a lot of those vampire stories to sort of the medieval Middle Ages British towns. You'd have these counts and vampires, but you'd also have like towns that had little like covens and cults, and they're really, really fun to watch. They're so beautiful to look at. They have this Eastman color. It's sort of like Technicolor, very vibrant, rich colors to watch. And like you have like Christopher Lee and who's the guy from Star Wars who they CGI'd his face, Moff Tarkin or something like that.
Okay, Moff Tarkin.
Peter Cushing.
Yeah,
That's
Peter
his name,
Cushing,
right?
yeah.
Peter Cushing. He's a lot of these as like a Van Helsing type character. He's usually the one whipping the town up into a fury. There's a great Hammer movie called Twins of Evil, where it has two twins who become, one of them becomes a vampire, one stays innocent. But there's some burning in the town because they're worried about satanic influence. So sometimes vampires, I feel like they just sit right on the edge of folk horror, depending on how they're used. Not always. Not
I
as
agree,
a general
yeah.
rule.
Definitely
But there's
like Bram Stoker's Dracula and Nosferatu definitely like skirts that line, I'd say.
Vampire Diaries does not.
Nor does True Blood, I would imagine.
Speaking of testing, no, go ahead. Sorry, Matthew.
Mine is probably much less intelligent than yours. I was going to say that vampires have in common with folk horror is that they're very horny. And that's very common in folk horror too.
But
Vampires
the difference is vampires get to have sex or sexual release, whereas people in folk horror don't until they get
sometimes
burned to
they do.
death.
If they're part of the little like,
Right,
evil group,
The
doing
hero
their
doesn't.
rituals, then yeah.
I just wondered, like, so if we're gonna test the parameters or the limits of the folk horror genre, if we would also put kind of rape revenge, or kind of like The Whirl is terrifying, films like Deliverance and I Spit in Your Grave.
Yeah.
We put them as folk horror, or those do not, because they're not about folklore. So I'm just trying to figure out if that they would also fit the bill.
Those are
mountain men folklore? Like
Well,
mountain men,
it's
right. The lore of that.
They're like
kinda,
Appalachian and stuff.
Yeah,
right?
it kind of skirts the
Vibe.
line.
it's like class horror. It's like if you're an urbanite, you're afraid of the hayseed.
That's
Like
true. There probably is a lot of classism inherent in those.
Yeah.
I've heard them referred to as Hicksploitation movies.
Exploitation. Okay, all right.
exploitation sounds.
Dude,
pretty good.
Deliverance is so effed up.
Oh yeah, it's
Effed
pretty
up
good.
movie.
It's funny. It's one of those movies that I'd heard so much about before seeing it, and I saw it after everything that'd been influenced by it and like one-upped it. So when I actually saw it, I was like, "That's it." I was like, "Come on,
Squeal like a pig. That's it.
yeah, that's it." I've seen Peckinpah that's crazier than this. Get out of here.
It's not untrue. Anyway, okay, so we're not gonna say that those are folk horror. I'm just trying to test the limits here.
They
yeah.
dance on the side.
Yeah, I traditionally have a very lenient definition of genre on this program.
Same.
So
You're saying funny games. I think so.
yeah, I mean, I think you could fit just about anything into just about anything. Which brings me to Pride and Prejudice.
And zombies.
Yeah.
Genius.
Colt Smith. Favorite would have to be either the original Wicker Man, Blood on Satan's Claw, The Witch, or The Hallow, an Irish film, with some honorable mentions in The Black Death, The Ritual, The Wailing, Apostle, Midsummer, The Lodgers, and loosely Crimson Peak, which I like.
Crimson
I'm gonna-
Peak holds up.
I'm gonna try to get through a
It's
few.
aging well.
Yeah. I'm going to try to get through a few quickly here. Teague brings up The Invitation, which we spoke about. Tyler Travis brings up Candyman, which I still have not yet seen. Did not know that the score is by Philip Glass, which is cool.
Yeah, it's great.
Which we talked about, though. Alexander Zirianov says they have more of a recommendation. If you're interested in Slavic folk horror, recommend Vi, V-I-Y. Have you seen
I'm
it?
so happy. This is a great movie. This is going to go under one of my favorites list. What's this viewer's name?
Alexander Zirianov.
Alexander, thank you. Thank you for bringing up V. V is so good. It's like a Russian folklore movie. It's the first
cool.
Soviet-made horror movie to get released in the USSR because of it like having that sort of class angle. We're like, oh, this is telling a story of the common folk. And it's about a monk, a Russian monk, who has to go pray over a witch in a mausoleum for 3 days. And she tries to like torture him and drive him crazy. But it's a fun, goofy thing. It feels like an
Sounds
after
like a
school special with great special effects and makeup, and there's all these kind of like Spirited Away style goblins that appear, and she floats around and hops. She's like a little bit like the Babadook. It's a joyride. V is great. Thank you for bringing this up, Alexander.
Nice.
That
Like
sounds...
from 1967. So there we go. It's another one of those late 60s.
Yeah.
Yeah, that time period
That-
was great for it.
the sweet spot for these.
Yeah.
Hey Man Nice Shot says they're not overly familiar with the subgenre, but recently enjoyed examples like The Witch and The Wind, which is a weird mix between Western and folk horror, definitely a slow burn but very effective, and The Hole in the Ground, which is Irish folk horror. It gets pretty weird and is particularly scary if you can't handle creepy kids. I haven't heard of The Wind or The Hole in the Ground, so
No, I don't know this.
got to add 2 to the list. Would You Kindly brings up Ken Russell's The Devils, which was banned in the UK for its blasphemy.
Mark, it looks like you had a reaction.
Yeah,
to this
Mark,
movie.
you know this one?
I love that film. I don't know if it's folk horror, but it is wild. Vanessa Redgrave plays this nun who's been possessed. I mean, she's clearly performing possession, and she's got a hunchback nun, and she's lusting over this priest, this kind of leader priest in the community, in a kind of like medieval, like late medieval town. And she basically is like pretending that he's possessed her in order to kind of like take revenge on him, not like for her love being unrequited.
Oh, wow.
So it's really sick and it is super twisted. And if you're into Ken Russell at all, I would highly recommend that film.
It sounds
I've heard
awesome.
I've heard his name come up a couple times in relation to folk horror. Did he do The Lair of the White Worm? Is that Ken Russell also?
I don't know about that one.
That one, I think it might be him. It's super trippy, weird. I think it maybe even has Hugh Grant, if I'm remembering correctly. Really trippy, psychedelic visuals, kind of like the movie Altered States, if you remember those little psychedelic
Oh, yeah,
sequences.
he did that one too.
Yes.
Layer of the White Worm has like a similar feel. It has some sequences that like in college you'd show your friends when they come over, like, check this out, it's really trippy, like that kind of stuff.
He did do that, 88, yep.
That's him. Yeah, that definitely feels like folk horror to me. It's got a cool snake lady with a twisty neck.
Oh, cool.
Ken Russell's really been forgotten, and he was so huge in the 70s repertory and art house scene in the US and in Europe, and it's such a tragedy that people have forgotten him, because formally I think there would be no Baz Luhrmann without Ken Russell.
Right, because I was going to say he did Tommy, which is crazy.
Yeah, with Tommy. And then I will say one other thing, which is that Derek Jarman was Ken Russell's set designer.
Oh.
So, we really wouldn't have Derek Jarman and his brilliant films also without Ken Russell. So I think we need to acknowledge.
Shout out, Ken Russell.
That's all I'll say. I could go on and on. He'll be in my book. Moving on.
Are you writing a book?
Yeah, but
is it about folk horror?
No,
Plug your book.
It definitely has some shout outs to folk horror. Absolutely.
Cool. I can't wait.
I can't wait either. Would You Kindly also brings up another British gem, Kill List.
Kill List. Ben Wheatley.
This seems like a Huber movie. I saw the trailer and I was like, I bet Huber's seen this and can give me his opinion.
Dude, Ben Wheatley, so sick. Kill List. Just these like hitmen that get in with a cult.
Oh, I need to see it.
Yeah, that sounds
That's all I wanted to
hype.
say.
See it.
And then also Ben Wheatley did A Field in England. Have you guys seen that one?
That was on my list, and I didn't have enough time. A Field in England was definitely one that came up in the folk
Ben
horror.
Wheatley's so legit. I got into him because they announced that he was doing Tomb Raider 2. I was like, oh, who's this guy? Let me get in on that. And then I just went back and I watched all his movies.
Did he end up actually doing Tomb Raider 2?
It's coming up down the line.
Oh, the new Tomb Raider.
The new Tomb Raider. Yeah, he's going to do Tomb Raider
Not
2.
the Angelina Jolie vehicle.
No, the Vikander one.
The Alicia Vikander vehicle.
Mm-hmm.
Would You Kindly also brings up season 1 of True Dicks, which was, I'd say kind of fits. Sort of pumped the brakes at the end in a weird way, but they also bring up Cat People.
Oh.
Which I've heard about, and I don't think I saw maybe the old one?
Is are they talking about the Val Lewton one?
I think they're talking about the Paul Schrader remake. Yeah.
Oh, maybe.
I don't know. Tef says Dog Soldiers is a hidden gem. I don't know anything about that one.
Soldiers, man, that's
Neil Marshall. Yeah.
Dude.
I was like, Huber knows this. Is Neil Marshall.
This is one of the greatest werewolf movies of all time. It's such a simple plot. This is low budget. This is before he even did The Descent. This is an army of soldiers trapped in a cabin in the woods going up against werewolves. That's the premise. It is awesome. The effects on the werewolves, so good. Just a really fun directorial debut, like low budget horror.
Nice.
Solid movie.
I actually didn't copy down the name of it, but Super Sushi mentioned Color Out of Space as probably not counting, but an interesting bridge from Nicolas Cage into weird kind of rural horror. We did Nicolas Cage last month.
Funny about Mandy, I'm sure.
Oh yeah, Mandy all the way. Mandy,
I still
Mandy.
didn't watch it, dude. I've been so busy. I was gonna
Huber!
watch it on October 1st.
You're gonna
I
love
know.
Mandy.
It can be your
It'll still
Halloween
be-
movie.
It's
Yeah,
gonna
it's
be.
gonna have a movie.
I'm gonna watch it at some point in October for sure.
All right.
I don't know what your relationship is to drugs, but do not smoke pot before watching it. I will give.
I don't know if Huber has ever done drugs or not.
Your brain's gonna need all the room in there
Yeah.
for Mandy.
Okay.
It
It's
can't have
gonna-
anything extra rattling around. It's
it's
gotta be
gonna
empty.
expand your brain.
Nicolas Cage. Is it one of his best roles?
I
Everyone
think
says-
so.
Definitely,
I love it.
definitely up there.
Yeah.
It's got a. Well, I don't want to spoil anything.
Okay.
Jorgen Moore. If we're including the Blair Witch, then not only is it my favorite folk horror movie, but favorite horror movie in general. This movie has elements of what I think folk horror captures best: intimate or normal setting, daylight as much of a threat as night, and confusion. The best part of the movie is that we never see, spoilers, the witch or the entity, but we experience it through the confusion and panic of the characters that do. Is this movie the scariest movie ever made? Of course not, but it was one of the first horror movies I saw when I was a kid, and it terrified me to the core. One thing I'll say about the Blair Witch and its effectiveness was the marketing campaign and like the kind of like mythos surrounding it when it came out. I was terrified of this movie just having it described to me by older coworkers. Like,
Yes.
I was horrified.
Yeah.
And I didn't even have to see it. And then I finally saw it, and I was like, okay, yeah, that was good.
And they did
Totally.
an amazing job. There's on, I don't know what channel aired it, but I remember as a kid watching basically a documentary on like the Blair Witch, and they made it look real.
They made it all
Like,
seem, yeah.
You know, like, so I remember going in the movie being like, no, the Blair Witch is real. Like there's accounts of it, and there's like other footage of it, and we're just watching like one like basically, you know, recovered whatever footage of it. And so I remember thinking like, no, this is real. You know, so
Yeah.
they did a really good job with the
Yeah.
marketing. You're totally
It-
right.
it
They
felt-
almost made it
felt-
like an ARG.
Yeah, it felt
Yeah.
very House of
Yeah.
Leaves kind of like
Yes.
that book.
I love Blair Witch is one of the all-time greats for me, just
Yeah.
because of everything surrounding it, the way it was made, like what it, you know, the ARG, like you're saying, like is it real, is it not? And
Yeah.
even like I did a rewatch like a few years ago, you know, turned on all the lights, got all cozy in the dark, and it scared the shit out of me still. Like the tension and the mood in Blair Witch, masterful.
Yeah.
I mean,
I think it's so good. Like to make a movie that low budget, that movie, what's the budget on that thing? Like less than $1 million bucks?
not high.
Yeah. Shoestring budget. Like I love Blair Witch.
Say what you will about literally torturing your cast,
Tortures,
but
yeah,
it's effective.
Yeah, they got tortured pretty much, right?
Blair Witch Project. Let's see. Budget. Wow.
$50,000.
60,000.
Boom.
60,000.
Crazy.
Uh,
Crazy.
worldwide pulled in 248 million. that is a good
That-
spread.
Hope their lawyers were around when they signed those contracts.
Oh my God. Yeah.
Huge movie. Landmark film. So influential, so important for horror.
Yeah, yeah.
And I want to say the people who did the
Game
misguided
changer.
sequel are the same guys who did The Guest, starring Dan Stevens, which is a really good movie. I think that's
Is
them.
Dan Stevens your favorite actor?
My sister really loves Dan Stevens, and I really liked Legion. So I like Dan
He-
Stevens a lot.
He left Downton Abbey, so I have a personal grudge against
Yeah.
him. Because anytime an actor leaves a show because they want to do bigger things, I get it on a personal level, but I'm also offended. It's like,
Well-
dude, you signed up for the show. You
Well, no,
signed
but
up
that's the
because
thing,
your
Huber.
commitment.
Huber in old Britannia, they've got it's more of a thing where British actors
Okay.
are known for
Fair.
not staying on a thing for more than a season or two.
Fair point. Great point. didn't realize that. I'll dial back
Yeah,
Grudge.
I mean that's why you have like the entire premise of Doctor Who, right? Is like because getting a British actor nailed down for more than like 3 or 4 seasons is bonkers, apparently. Zach Wojnar, I'm not 100% sure if this counts. Then you're right on board, baby. But my mom showed me The Believers when I was probably a little too young to get excited for horror. It's about a Santeria cult, and it's got some spooky, crazy imagery, like a spider bursting out of a nasty pimple with no CGI. My mom is Honduran, and as a little girl, that Santeria stuff was her boogeyman, since there were local so-called witch doctors in the mountains who she was instructed by family and friends to stay the F away from. Whoa. I haven't heard of this. Yeah, I didn't need to see that one.
Especially with that backstory.
Yeah.
Well, on that note of talking about films from the global south or from Central and Latin America, I just saw a film recently, a Guatemalan horror film. I'm not sure if you guys have seen it. I'm not going to botch the name, but I think it's called La Llorona.
La Llorona.
Yeah. Have you seen it?
I haven't seen this new official legit one. I've seen the shitty Conjuring universe, The Curse of La Llorona, which is not good.
Not good.
But this is on my month to watch. I'm 100% watching this before Halloween.
It's on that, what's that horror platform? I can't remember. Shudder. It's on Shudder, I believe. It was. It hopefully still is. I really think that this film people should see. I'm going to plug it because, and it is folk horror. It totally fits with the theme. Just quickly, it's about basically this Guatemalan general who's basically on trial for having slaughtered indigenous people. And he basically, their protesters kind of surround his home, and he's kind of contained to his home. And basically there's a new maid comes in, and basically she has some resemblance to a woman that he has slaughtered, he administered the killing of. So anyway, so it's about this kind of entering into the home that cannot be penetrated of this powerful person. It's deeply political, it's creepy, it's beautiful, it's slow, it's haunting. I would highly recommend this film.
That kind of is an interesting inversion of the typical folk horror thing. Instead of you or the hero going out, it's the unknown coming in. Yeah.
Totally, and it's of course with the indigeneity of it,
right.
It does lend itself to that kind of folk coming in. So yeah, I think it's you're right. It's an interesting take on the genre.
Very cool.
Yeah, don't let the Conjuring one soil this one or sully this one.
What is this one called again?
Just La Llorona, right?
La Llorona.
Yeah,
it's called La Llorona.
It's spelled LLORONA. I did not take Spanish in high school.
Llorona or La Llorona?
All the time.
Yeah,
La Llorona. So yeah, La Llorona. It is again a Guatemalan film. It came out I want to say within the past 6 months, and it's
wow.
And available on Shudder. And the director and the producer are super awesome guys. And I can't wait to see what they come up with next.
Sweet. I'm trying to get us to our big Midsummer and Hereditary blowout here. Caitlin Slavin brings up the Babadook, which we've talked about, and then another one, Recults, is The Sacrament, a fictional movie heavily based on the Jonestown Massacre. And she told a story about showing the movie early in dating to her husband, who did not like it. And then he says he didn't believe that this would happen. And then she's like, well, it's based on Jonestown. And he's like, what's that? And he had not heard of it. And so she had to explain Jonestown to her.
You just start with the Kool-Aid. Explain how that, became.
Well, he said he knew that phrase, but didn't know it was actually something. James Davey, of course, the Wicker Man 73. Leo S. Luna, we talked about their comment. Tokyo Slim, patron saint of reaction shots, says the Blood on Satan's Claw, Witchfinder General, and the Wicker Man are kind of the platform on which all other Western folk horror kind of exploded. I'd say that seems pretty accurate. I think all three of those movies are fantastic in their own way, but moving forward from there, Ravenous with Guy Pearce and Robert Carlyle, I think counts. I love that movie, he says. I've never seen it. One of his favorites. What is this one? What is Ravenous?
It's a film from the late 90s. I remember not getting great reviews at the time, but I thought the trailer was really scary. I didn't go to see it as a kid, but it stuck with me. So I'm just reacting to, I need to see that.
Yeah, I got to see it. He also brings up Kill List and A Field in England and Picnic at Hanging Rock, our first mention of that, which I have not yet seen, but that's Peter Weir, right?
Yeah, that movie's so subtle that it's hard for me to imagine placing it in the horror category. Apart from the fact that some girls go missing from the school, which is horrific. If it was somebody you knew and they just went missing, of course that would feel horrible. But in the movie is so delicately told and very sedate and has like nice calming sunsets on the Australian countryside that it doesn't feel scary at any point.
Oh, okay.
I've heard it mentioned because it has sort of that vibe of a community, sort of their lives unraveling. And I'm trying to think of like a nice PC way to say when everybody loses their minds collectively.
Mass hysteria.
Mass hysteria. Hysteria has like its own trouble.
Well, that's true.
But we know what we're talking about. What's happening with our country now? A small community. Everybody loses their mind and does
the end times.
Yeah. So Picnic at Hanging Rock has a little bit of
2020 syndrome.
Just slightly in this girls' dormitory school. It's a good movie. It's really graceful. It's a graceful movie. I like it. Peter Weir.
Where?
Hey, Ian, is anyone saying the remake of Wicker Man at all, or is that
no one brought it up literally at all. I expected like someone else brought up Color Out of Space as the Nicolas Cage into folk horror link and did not bring. No one brought up new Wicker Man.
No need.
No need to. I was just wondering. I was just curious.
I love new Wicker Man just for the like 10-minute supercut of all the nutcase shit that happens on YouTube. That movie is directed by Neil LaBute.
Oh
what
my
a
God.
batshit nutcase person.
Yeah.
With a bizarre career trajectory. Maybe I need to rewatch In the Company of Men and reread a couple of his early plays that I thought I liked in theater school back in college.
No sense. No, it makes no sense. Why? Who gave him that budget? Who gave him the green light? It literally does not track. It is not a movie at all in the LaBute universe. I think it was I think someone was on drugs. I don't know.
Certainly.
All of them.
And I just hear he's not a nice dude anyway. Yeah. Tokyo Slim also says, I thought this was interesting, another thing to briefly note, that once you move away from Occidental folklore mythology that quite a lot of Asian and African horror qualifies. We touched on it with the Wailing, but there's a lot of ghost stories in Chinese and Japanese mythology. There are forest demons, witches, there are shape-changing animals and monsters, there are unspeakable rural horrors, Kuronoko, Onibaba, Quidan, etc., are ones that I can think of right off the top of my head on the Japanese side.
Those are great. Also, Takashi Miike did a folk horror movie.
He did?
Takashi Miike did a movie called The Great Yokai War. So if you've played Yokai Watch or if you've watched Spirited Away or Miyazaki movies, imagine Takashi Miike making a PG-13 version of those characters.
I can't imagine him making a PG-13 anything.
For kids, but obviously with its Takashi Miike sensibility. It's as crazy as it sounds. It's a fun watch.
How do you cut someone's nipples off in PG-13?
He finds a way.
He finds a way. That's the magic.
Love finds a way.
In the time we've been talking, Takashi Miike already made a movie.
Yeah, he made
right
probably
now.
2.
Check your watch. He just made another one.
He found a way to make them at 6 times real time. Everyone just acts really hard.
Chinese Ghost Story is also another good Asian folk one. Has anyone seen Chinese Ghost Story? It's got those hopping vampires that are like bluish purple. They even show up in Spelunky. It's sort of like a famous archetype.
Oh yeah,
Chinese Ghost
I've
Story.
seen them in Spelunky actually.
Yeah, that's a fun movie. It's more of the like Ghostbusters variety. You don't have to worry about getting scared. You're just gonna see spooky stuff that's fun. And it's got Leslie Chung, I think is how you pronounce that actor's name. He became big with Wong Kar-wai. He did Happy Together, a couple of his other movies. Yeah, he started off. He kind of made his big break with Chinese Ghost Story.
Yeah.
Nice.
That sounds great. Morgan Mahala says, I feel like this might be cheating, but for me, the docu-series and documentaries revolving around real-life cults are what scared me the most, from Branch Davidians in Waco to the Charles Manson family in California. It all gets under my skin in a way like no other because of what's out there happening right now. Watching it is like a car crash where I want to look away, but I'm compelled to witness and I'm transfixed. I'm mad at myself for not moving this closer to our next topic. So nobody talk about that yet. Forget that I said that comment, and then we'll think about it in a minute when we get into Matthew's curious specialty. Juice. All right, this is the last one before the massive blowout we're gonna have with Midsommar and Hereditary. Juice Mofo says there are 2 movies I want to shout out. First, Witchfinder General, a gothic horror combined with Every Man for Himself nihilism of Sergio Leone's westerns, and one of Vincent Price's best performances, underrated classic. Second, Lords of Salem. I wasn't sure at first, but now I think this is Rob Zombie's highest artistic achievement. I just don't know if he did it on purpose. The continuity of time and events is disrupted to the point where the viewer feels unsure if they are seeing the past, present, or complete hallucination that could be fueled by either drugs or witchcraft. The feverish uncertainty are what make it great. And I'd like to see it get more credit. I haven't seen that one.
I haven't seen that one.
No.
He did House of a Thousand Corpses and all that shit?
Yeah.
Devil's Rejects.
I cannot do Devil's Rejects. I cannot.
I like Devil's Rejects.
It's too gross.
It's
fine. It's fine. It's fine. At the time, it was great. You know, horror,
it just made me feel so uncomfortable as a kid. Maybe I was just too young. I watched the beginning and end of Green Inferno for preparing for this. That movie is garbage. Did I say that already? Did I say that before we started shooting? I don't remember.
I think before, yeah.
All right. The moment we've all been waiting for.
Drum roll, please.
I put this last because it sort of mirrors my own feelings, actually, and we can get into it. But Varun Kachwaha says, I personally don't like culty films. I do like culty films. That's not what I'm talking about. But this part. They often to me are too predictable, and more often than not involves characters making obviously dumb choices, and that is a turnoff for me in films. It just makes me want to stop paying attention. The characters always feel like caricatures, just too exaggerated. Like Midsommar. Aesthetically, it's a really good film, but if you watch 15 minutes of it, you kind of know where it's heading. Apostle, for me, was one of the most disappointing films I saw last year. I expected more from the director that made 2 of my favorite films, Raid 1 and 2. It was a film that just did not know what it wanted to be. 1 second, it's a romance film, then cult, then mystery, then horror. 1 second, the main character can just fight people, only for the next second to be taken down in seconds by anyone. It just flip-flops between so many things and loses an identity. I'm going to be disliked for this, but Hereditary as well. The acting was good. I just couldn't take it seriously. I'm sorry, but I found it funnier than a lot of comedies I've seen. It's just something about watching a suburban mom jumping around the house. I just wanted to add a different dimension to the discussions. You never know. You might find a cult film that I like from this episode. Funny they mentioned that, because I kind of agree with Midsommar and Hereditary. I was like, I find, what's the guy's name? Ari Aster? Is that his name?
Yeah. Yep.
I find that he has an Achilles heel, for me at least, and maybe it's just because our brains work in similar ways. I don't know. But I think that if you, and I don't know if you're a film student or what, and I've talked about this on the show before, I think, but if you know the language of film and can pay attention to his context clues, his movies are the most predictable things you've ever seen in your entire life. Because he tells you in the beginning of all his movies, or at least Hereditary and Midsommar, literally everything that's going to happen, which I think sometimes works and sometimes doesn't. And whereas I think Midsommar and Hereditary are both executed incredibly well, that element of it didn't quite work for me in both of those movies. Also, Hereditary did have me laughing at a few points.
Crazy, dude. I didn't laugh one time. The movie's so messed up. What parts were you laughing at?
There's a part when a headless body kind of floats and then just goes like boop up into a treehouse, and I was like, lol.
Midsommar, I laughed a lot at.
Midsummer's a lighter film.
Lighter in quotes, but
yeah.
Midsommar was almost like aggressively dumb in a way that I found funny and at times enjoyable. This director, I'm not in love with, Ari Aster. I kind of have like a chip on my shoulder about him, but I found Midsommar interesting enough to be worth the watch. And overall, it ended on such a good note that like I can say I partially liked it. Yeah.
Yeah, I think Midsommar was overhyped.
Yeah.
I think Hereditary is a masterpiece. It's one of my favorites ever, especially recently. A lot of that obviously has to do with Toni Collette. Just the horror performance of the decade.
Oh, yeah, she's amazing.
Question.
She got robbed.
Just carries that movie. I really like it. But yeah, Midsommar. It's funny you talk about like the endings. You like predicting the endings, and I didn't really.
Well, I mean, in Midsommar, there's a literal tapestry early on that shows you the entire plot of the movie, like literally, and then just like there are obvious tells. And I mean, I don't know. Maybe I'm just attuned to tells in stuff because I tend to catch on to them. I don't know, but like there are a lot of tells in Midsommar where if you're paying attention, you're like, and maybe it's just because I like folk horror and I've seen a decent amount of it that I like my alarm bells were ringing. I'm like, this seems on purpose. I don't know, but like, Mark, I don't know. You go.
I mean, it depends on how you watch movies. I guess I empathize a little bit more with that. I don't know what their username was, but what they had to say.
Varun Kachwaha.
What was it?
Varun Kachwaha.
That's such a great name.
It's a beautiful name. I love it.
I empathize more what they said about, kind of watching characters that are making stupid decisions, and being so frustrated by that.
Yeah, the why won't you leave syndrome.
Well, I'm not really sure. What's that?
The why won't you leave syndrome.
Yeah, the why won't you leave syndrome, and that's definitely like a test for a screenwriter, right? Or really a lot of kinds of writers, right? Playwrights too. How do you keep them in the room, or how do you keep them in that space? I empathize a little more with that than the predictability kind of thesis. I believe in genre, and I think that if you really know genre, then a lot of things are predictable, and that doesn't mean that there can't be a pleasure from those, both because they're predictable, but also for other things. And so I guess maybe I knew how Midsommar would end, knowing knowing actually if you catch on pretty early on, that's more so a breakup movie than anything. Right. It's about this woman kind of coming into this realization that this guy she's with is a dick, and she needs to find some kind of sense of solace and community elsewhere. Okay, well then it becomes pretty predictable, right? But the ride is so. I loved it. I'm going to defend Midsommar, and I'm going to defend it more than Hereditary, because I think Hereditary is him throwing, a lot in different kind of horror cliches into the pot and giving it a stir and just kind of like, okay, this is the dish I'm serving up. So I have some issues with Hereditary, but Midsommar has that focus that I like, and it has that folk horror focus, and I love that this kind of realization that this heroine comes to, and I love that it's drug induced. And I love that, again, it involves this kind of perverse community that has its own kind of ethical code that is very foreign and alien to a lot of people who are going to be watching it and going like, maybe I see a kind of rationale there, And so anyway, so I think I love Midsommar, and I would defend it as well.
And it's anchored by another leading lady, just with a career-defining performance. Florence Pugh in that is ungodly.
Incredible.
So good.
And the detail, I mean, like Third Day tries to do the kind of drug trip. You're tripping along with the character, and you're hallucinating, and so therefore the protagonist becomes unreliable, or are they paranoid in these moments? And what Midsommar does is actually, I think, does a better job of it, and does a more discreet job, because even that shot of her as the queen at the end of the table, and you see the kind of flowers on her crown pulsating,
breathing,
that's no longer her POV, that's no longer her perception. Oh yes, yes,
nice.
On the flower.
For listeners, Matthew has put on a wreath of flowers.
Thank you for bringing your crown of flowers.
I'm just going to wear this for the rest of the show now.
I love it.
I think that shot, I'm sorry, I'm kind of rambling here, but I think that shot of where you're no longer in her perception, but you're just sharing her perception away and outside of her. I love the way the film brings you in. And it kind of has this kind of, it also settles in that kind of that towards the end, and it's quiet in a way that horror films don't tend to do that.
Yeah.
Right? They tend to be the blood and the gore and the violence. This film settles into the kind of ease of this character realizing, I don't want what was there before. I'm going to take what this community is giving me. I think it's so perverse and fascinating.
I largely agree. My issues, the issues I take with Midsummer are mainly just I wish he hadn't played to tropes as heavily as he did, because I didn't think he needed to. Like I didn't think that the boyfriend needed to just be so overtly shitty from the word go. You know, like it's
a little nuance with that.
Like have a little nuance. Like it almost it would have made his point even more palpably and more in a more complex way if it was a nuanced relationship and not just us saying like dump this fucker, like from the word go. Stuff like that, where I felt, and like I think it played it pretty close to the chest with the friends bringing them there on purpose. So like that's an example of where it was subtle, even though, you know, because like you said, because of being a fan of the genre, like I kind of figured that was what was happening. And like with most of these, it kind of becomes a game when you're familiar enough with folk horror to be like, okay, like 60% of the way through, you're not wondering like, how's this going to go? You're wondering, okay, is this the kind of movie where the main character dies or where the main character joins up?
I think the only time horror surprises me is when the hero lives.
Right.
Like every single horror movie I ever go into, it's like, okay, they're going to die. Protagonist is going to die. How are they going to die? How are we going to get there? And I'm just along for the ride to witness their demise. Yeah. And then if they end up living, I'm like, oh, didn't see that coming.
Yeah. Remind me what happens to Toni Collette at the end of Hereditary. I'm terrible for asking and ending.
It ain't good.
I thought she lives to see that her son is like the whatever, the one that's the king or whatever, right? Is that correct?
Treehouse.
Define lives. Shot. Yeah, she's remember I mentioned a treehouse before.
Yeah.
We're spoiling the shit out of her.
We can talk about this.
Well, I'll tell you later. We've already basically spoiled it, but
I know. I just couldn't remember, and that's a problem that I couldn't remember.
Well, it's an Ari Aster film, so luckily you can just watch the first 15 minutes and you'll remember the entire damn movie.
Has anyone seen his shorts? Ari Aster shorts?
Mm-mm.
I haven't either, and I actually wanted to program that with Wayward as part of Wayward Cinema for this month, but of course, you know. And maybe I'll do a drive-in cinema, like a guerrilla style drive-in.
I've been hearing that those pop-up drive-ins are happening.
Yeah, I might be able to figure it out, but I've been curious about those just because I hear they're really twisted, and maybe with a short, you know, he can take more risks and not be so genre kind of beholden to genre in a way that makes it predictable. I don't know, but I was just wondering if you guys had seen those.
I'd be interested. Yeah.
Yeah.
Matthew,
what's the Guillermo del Toro short? What is that one? What's it called? It's like Geometra.
I don't know.
It's like this freaking demon possession one.
I don't know.
He summons a demon to help him with school. It's like Guillermo early days, like before Chronos, before it all. I like horror, like when these horror directors start out with short films. It's cool.
Yeah.
I couldn't look it up because I forgot how to spell Guillermo.
I think James Wan too, right? He did Saw.
Well, and what's the movie?
The Saw short. What's
that short film that you always told me to watch that I keep forgetting to watch? The Fall.
Oh my God, The Fall from what is his name?
I don't remember. You're the one who has to tell me every month.
Is this before The Lighthouse that you saw?
Yes.
Oh yeah.
Yes. One of the most intense theater moments of my entire life. Before The Lighthouse, they showed
Jonathan Glazer.
Glazer, dude.
Oh.
Jonathan freaking Glazer.
Oh, he's a music video director too, right? He does a lot of great music videos. Yeah.
He's only done a few movies. Holy
Under the
shit,
Skin,
dude.
Sexy Beast, Birth.
And Birth. Birth is genius.
He is such a good director. He's only done so few movies. The guy needs to make more movies. Get on it, Jonathan Glazer. Yeah. The Fall was, it just played before The Lighthouse. Nobody knew what the hell was happening.
I think it was on Mubi too, so it's available online, I'm sure, still.
Oh, nice. Okay. Yeah, now I'm trying to remember this short film starring Terrence Stamp. Where he's playing like a famous actor and he gets decapitated.
Is it like Damn It, Donnie, or something
Yeah.
like that. Toby Damn
Toby
It.
Damn
That's a Fellini short film.
Yeah. Toby Damn It. Seek that one out. It's dope. Doesn't he see like the devil in that? There's like
I think so.
there's like a girl that's the devil.
it was a 3-segment. Okay, sorry, I'm looking
Spirits
it up.
of the Dead. Yeah.
It was from Edgar Allan Poe's short stories. It was American Independent International Pictures. Okay,
Yeah.
anthology film. Cool. That sounds great.
Yeah. Toby Damn It is one of them, and it's so good. I think it was Terrence Stamp.
Well, he was in a bunch of Italian films. Anyway, we're going off.
We're way off the beaten path.
Sorry.
Anyways,
Jonathan Glazer, dude. I'm sorry.
Jonathan Glazer. Yeah.
Anyway,
I think
Midsummer
Birth
is great.
fascinating. Birth is a good film too. Like it doesn't really have a horror aspect, but it has a horror vibe too. Or it doesn't have like a kind of doesn't have the gore and all that, but it does have it's unsettling. And I think it's a good film for someone who's like, I don't like horror. Okay, well I'm gonna show you Birth because it's like not horror, but it's definitely uneasy, you know.
Yeah.
Does Antichrist count
Oh,
as folk horror?
I think folk horror. Yeah.
Yeah, it's less of a community thing, but it's like out in the wilderness.
And she's researching the history, right? Is she
Yeah,
writing just
kind of.
on witch hunts. And
Yeah,
stuff?
hatred of women or something like that.
Yeah, gynophobia. Yeah.
Gynophobia. Yeah.
Those sirens are arresting Lars von Trier right now.
Yep.
He said something bad again.
He did something terrible.
I couldn't finish Antichrist. We talked about my boundaries before. Halfway point, I hit the ripcord. I was like, "That's it. I can't do it anymore. I'm out."
Genitals being smashed by a log and still completing is where the line. Pretty.
I could not handle it.
It's a very gruesome film.
I saw it at the New York Film Festival the year that it came out, and when I was living in New York, and someone had a seizure after the clit castration sequence, the female castration sequence. And the lights came on, and we were all like, "What's going on?" And we all were like, "Did someone have a heart attack?" But someone had a seizure.
Oh my god!
It was one of those moments, right? Like really cinematic. We're all
unforgettable
and experiencing.
Now I'm really glad I stopped watching it after hearing that.
I mean,
that could have been me next.
I would say Melancholia is probably a much more watchable movie that kind of says the same thing. All his movies kind of say the same thing. I like Melancholia though. I mean, the dude's a dick, but I like Melancholia. Also, just like the colors of Antichrist and Melancholia are just like unmatched.
And Dogville. Sorry, we're not doing
it.
I do like some of his films, even though I agree that his gender politics is also stupid, like anti-American.
He's just generally a tool.
Yeah, he's just a dick.
One movie that was not brought up, but that my girlfriend, who is Norwegian, showed me, which I loved, is called Troll Hunter.
Yes.
And that movie fucking rules.
So good.
So sick. So good. I forgot about this
I'd say it definitely
man.
counts in a different kind of way. It's found footage movie. This documentary.
Supposed to remake it at some point.
They don't need to, man. It's perfect.
Yeah.
The documentary crew following a guy who is a troll hunter for the government. And it's like kind of funny, kind of touching. It's really good. It reminded me of a movie that nobody has ever heard of but me for some reason. Although I would be surprised if maybe one or two of you haven't heard of it. Incident at Loch Ness. None of you have heard of this?
Is that like a documentary like Blair Witch?
It's a mockumentary. It's a mockumentary making of behind the scenes movie of a fake documentary that Werner Herzog was going to make about the Loch Ness Monster. But his producer wanted to spice things up and puts like a robotic Loch Ness Monster in the water, and Werner Herzog is in it as himself. And he's just like, this is not what I want to do or whatever. But it goes places and it's phenomenal. Huber and I actually, as part of Patron Party on Wednesday, the 21st at 7 p.m. PST-ish, are going to be doing a film club live commentary, watch along on Discord. And I wonder if Incident at Loch Ness would maybe be a good movie.
Pretty fun.
I have no idea if I could find it, if I could get my hands on it to even present it.
That sounds like a good time.
But yeah, if you are a patron in the $7 and up tier, you are in for our watch along commentary. I'll be doing a post about it probably tomorrow or soon, and we should probably figure out if it should just be like a few people talking or if everybody can talk. It might be a shit show. I don't know.
Oh, no.
Mark says just a few people should talk.
Yes.
I'm already uncomfortable talking during a movie, so.
Oh yeah, true. Well, it'll be like a live commentary that we can never
like
show.
Mystery Science Theater kind of stuff.
Like Mystery Science Theater, and that we can never replay anywhere because it's legally specious. In fact, forget you heard anything about that. Anyway, the Midsummer discussion and cults in general leads us to our next segment, which the patrons didn't know about. But Matthew, I think we've mentioned this briefly here and there.
We have. It's coming back to me now.
It's coming back. But you once told me that you were researching for a project based on cults. And your methodology was very fascinating to me. You want to tell us about this?
Yeah, so I was working on a book on cults about this is now a while back, a decade back, almost in a different lifetime. I felt like your writer who wrote in that said that they thought a lot of cult movies were stereotypical or flat. I actually think there's been a lot of good ones recently, and with the documentaries that you brought up, things have gotten a lot better. But a decade ago, I was really disappointed because I'm like, cults are fascinating and movies aren't showing it. I'm going to write a fictional book that tells a real story of a cult, what makes these people interesting and why they would get so fascinated in a bizarre theology to stick around under these weird circumstances. So I joined a bunch of cults, and it's very easy to do. It's very easy to join cults. They're looking for members always. So you just kind of like go to the airport or you can call some up on the phone and
do a MAGA rally.
God, you could now. Well, the book was going to be about a microcosm of cults and how that reflected national ideologies, which now our country's kind of run away with.
Yeah.
But I got in a little over my head with the cults. I was in touch with some not so great groups and people. It got a little scary, including Midsummer felt very accurate to me. Midsummer felt like something I myself had almost gone through. There was I don't want to name some of these groups because there are nice people within the cults, and I don't want to bring them unpleasant attention. But there was a cult north of San Francisco that I went up to. I took a train ride up there, a train ride and a bus ride, and it was a weekend-long retreat. I'd always wanted to do a weekend-long retreat. I was scared. I was kind of cult shopping, like, which cult is going to be safe enough where I can go to a retreat in the mountains? Because, like, cults love to do that.
Yeah.
Cults love to have like little cabin retreats, like where they're secluded. It's a deal. But like a lot of them I'd get scared off. Like they'd tell me about the retreat and then they'd say something creepy like, we're going to cover you in honey and have ants eat it off. And I'm like, oh, nope. I'm out. Sorry, can't do that. So I finally found one that felt safe enough to attend to me. And this was they were up in the mountains and there was going to be like 70 people there. I went up there. The disguise that they used, because they didn't want to get found out what they were doing, is they were having a Brazilian folk music concert. So went up into the mountains, kind of like out past this goat ranch, and there were signs like, this way for the Brazilian folk music concert. You get there, there's 70 people all in white robes. They asked me to dress completely in white. So it was definitely the full cult experience. And they dosed us with intense doses of psychedelic drugs that they'd made up themselves. Like a lot, like Herculean amounts. They told everybody that there's going to be...
so intense!
They told everybody there's going to be a voice in your head saying, don't take more of these drugs, but you need to ignore that voice and take more of these drugs. So they're like, ignore the voice in your head that's screaming for safety. They were and they were a little bullying about it. You definitely felt like you might be in trouble if you didn't keep going back up to get more doses. And then they played children's songs on repeat while we were all tripping out on these drugs, like row, row, row your boat, twinkle, twinkle, little
That's
star.
so uncomfortable.
Yeah. At one point, most of the people had passed out. I was having a not so pleasant experience. I was not enjoying it. Similar to some of the things you might have seen in some of these folk horror movies, I was having my own internal freak out. Everybody in the room is crying. Some people are like weeping and screaming, and some are, they start passing out. Oh, I'm getting a little bit of
Was,
an
it,
echo.
was it like ayahuasca? What did they give you? Acid?
So
or
I think
vanilla?
I think it was ayahuasca, like early ayahuasca. Like before, I hadn't even heard of it. So when I was trying to research back then about it, there wasn't a lot. It was still like in Peru back then, so it wasn't big in America. But I also don't think this was a particularly well-made batch of it. Everybody was just having a horrible experience. But people passed out, and then they put on a song. I just pretended to pass out, but I was still awake. I was too afraid to pass out. They put on a song while everybody was asleep that said, "I am happy, I am good, I am happy, I am good," over and over on repeat for like 30 minutes. In the morning, when everyone woke up, everyone was like giving each other hugs and like, "Wow, that was a crazy experience. How was it?" And they were like, "I'm happy, I'm good." They would say it like in a chant like way. But it was intense. It did a number on my mind in a way that maybe isn't podcast safe. It took a little bit to recover from. It was very intense. It was almost like a Philip K. Dick story where you get a little lost in levels of reality. I would like live a couple lifetimes and then like snap back and still be in the cult. And I was like, wait, 70 years just happened. Now I'm still back here. It kept happening over and over and over again. Where the cult would end, I'd go back to regular life. I'd live my life for years, and then boom, it would be over, and I'd be back in the cult. I was like, what was that? So,
like Inner Light, Star Trek.
Yeah, very, very intense. I do not recommend. Kids and adults, do not go to a cult, even if you're doing it under research, and imbibe the substances that they offer you. I mean, I literally drank the Kool-Aid is what happened. And there's more I could say, but I won't. But it's as intense as a lot of the things we've seen in these movies.
What was their goal?
What
were they trying to...
Good question.
Have you say or feel?
They were getting a lot of money out of people for these retreats, and they were getting them into a vulnerable place where they felt like they needed to return to do more in order to work on their spiritual warfare. We were leaving our bodies and going to a spiritual plane to like fix the universe, essentially. So,
wowzer.
Yeah, that about sums it up. And then so I stopped researching cults. And I didn't finish the book. After that, I was like, I saw what I needed to see. The box open. I'm gonna close that box for a very long time, and I'm gonna revisit it sometime.
I hope
when
for
enough
my
distance
sake
has happened.
Yeah, that you do finish
this project
the book,
will happen. Yeah.
We've talked about Sound of My Voice on here, right?
Sound of My Voice.
That was great. That came out after I had done this, and I thought that was really well done. I thought it was really well done. Yeah, I saw that and I was like, I could show people. I was like, that was close to my experience. Sure. Like just a dumb researcher. I was cocky. I was like, they're not gonna get me. I'm a cowboy. They can't fool this cowboy. They can't get in my head.
Is that a memoir or is that a book on someone's cult experience? What is
The Sound of My Voice?
It's a movie about investigators researching a cult.
It's a Britt Marling movie.
I adore that movie.
Yeah.
Then they did the one with Ellen Page was after that. The East.
Flatliners?
No, The East. It was also the same director.
Oh yeah. Cult, I never saw that one.
Type thing, and then
the OA.
The OA was recent. Yeah.
Oh, the OA. Yeah.
I watched the first part of the OA. I didn't watch the rest. I watched most of Another Earth, and then I kind of didn't finish it, but I like Britt Marling a lot. Mm-hmm. Another one that I recently saw that I mentioned it before, but The Endless, which is on Netflix. It fits kind of folk horror, sci-fi horror, cult, all of that. Pretty interesting movie. Small budget, cool premise. But anyway, thank you for sharing that, Matthew. Good Lord.
You asked me in the past, and we were like talking about romantic comedies or something. I'm like, this isn't the moment to jump into it. But this episode, it seems very fitting.
It's one of my favorite.
Out.
Yeah. Oh, I'm
God.
Every time you tell me that story, I hear more details, and I'm just like, oh my God, I'm so happy you're still alive.
Off channel, that is now one of the milder stories of my life. We have so many stories to get into over the course of our friendship.
You are definitely a rip-roaring young man.
Cowboy.
I remember
Cowboy Walden.
we bumped into each other at that Grimes concert that I was accidentally at. And that was fun.
Oh, we went for Christine and the Queens.
I went for Christine and the Queens, yeah.
Yes, Christine and the Queens.
Because that was before she was headlining. Or they, I think, were headlining.
They had all those dancers, yeah.
Oh, God. Christine and the Queens. Look into it.
Amazing. Love them.
They're amazing. Tilted. Great video.
Yeah.
All right. We are almost at 2 hours. I told you this always happens. I aim for an hour and a half. And we just keep on trucking because I'm having a blast.
It was a barn burner. We had something had to burn.
Yeah.
It was a barn burner of an episode.
So, but before we move on, I'm going to rocket speed a few questions. But before we move on, I want to ask you all, what do you think your favorite folk horror film or films are personally? Mark, you got one loaded? Or somebody else?
Yeah, I mean, I would say the original Wicker Man for sure.
Yeah.
You know, it really sets the standard. And God, you guys were talking earlier about like, you know, comedy versus like scary ratio, I guess, in horror films. And to me, like the Wicker Man has this like really, it's so campy, and it's like
beautiful.
when the innkeeper's daughter is like naked and like singing to him against the wall, like I love that, and I laugh, and I'm also like creeped out. And so anyway, so that film I think has it all. And then, you know, that kind of last, whatever it is, few scenes of the film where they're all walking, you know, through, you know, whatever the lands with their masks on and stuff. I'm like, can I join? Like, you know, where sign me up. Like, I just love the look of that film, and I like the vibe of it.
I would agree that one's definitely one of my favorites. I definitely think The White Ribbon, Das Weiße Band, is up there for me. And I'm loving The Third Day so far. I'm really enjoying it. It's not perfect. It has some tonal fluctuations and some quality fluctuations, but by and large, I'm just kind of enjoying.
Yeah.
Maybe it's just because I'm super in like a fall mood, and it's just scratching that itch. And like in episode 4, a character literally asks, "Why didn't we leave?" and then the show tells you why, and it's like, "Oh, sick!" Like,
well, and the way it engages with race, right, in that second chapter.
Oh my God!
Kind of at the helm of, I think it's very interesting.
Yeah.
And then of course the twist won't say at the end.
No
of that
spoilers.
episode.
Yeah, no spoilers.
You know, I think it could go into a really interesting place, but I think the show has made some serious blunders. But we'll talk about that offline.
Yeah. Definitely, yeah. I'm giving it probably a pass that in the future if I watch it again. Although we did rewatch a few scenes in the first episode, and it foreshadows some stuff in pretty cool ways that I actually didn't catch when I first watched it. So, Huber, what's your favorite folk horror?
The newer ones. It's got to be like The Wailing, The Witch.
The Witch, dude.
Hereditary. Yeah. Like those three. Yeah. I feel like we're just in this new golden age of horror the last like 5 or 6 years. It's just I love the way horror has gone, and just those movies just like made me fall in love with the genre all over again.
I would shout out Houseu as well, if that counts. I think it kind of does. Matthew, what about you?
I really like this Italian movie called All the Colors of the Dark. It's got a great name, and it's got a great poster. It's early 70s, right in this period of folk horror. It's pre-Suspiria, but it's part of that Italian horror giallo genre.
Pseudo-giallo.
It's by a director called Sergio Martino. And it has a soundtrack by Bruno Nicolai, who is one of the best Italian composers, which is saying a lot, one of the best Italian film composers. And it's like pre-Suspiria, a woman gets in a car crash, kind of like Babadook, and she's a little confused. And then a satanic coven welcomes her in the countryside, and they promise her they'll help her get herself together. And then it's very hallucinatory, psychosexual madness, very fun, very Italian of the 70s. Highly recommend it. The colors are beautiful. Those horror directors just have a way of making a color palette come alive. So if you're in the mood for something bright in like a psychedelic dream coat of a movie. That's it. And then I really like Valerie and Her Week of Wonders.
Oh,
That's
yeah.
from the
You
Czech.
mentioned that one to me.
That's from the Czech New Wave. It's by a really talented lady named Esther Krambakova. She wrote the script for it. She was also the production designer for the movie Daisies. If anybody's seen Daisies, Daisies is a really punk rock women in the Czech New Wave movie. Recommend both of these. But Valerie and Her Week of Wonders is like a surrealist Slavic folklore vampire coming of age story. It's a little creepy, it's a little unsettling. I can't wholeheartedly endorse it because after looking into it a little bit, they didn't really treat their actors or child actors on set kind of properly the way we should now. We have proper regulations about a lot of those things. So it's a problematic fave, but it's also a beautiful movie, really interesting. If you love surrealism, it's a great folk horror movie. There's burning at the stake. That always has to happen in a folk horror movie. And then the last one I want to recommend is Love Witch. Love Witch is a recent movie by Anna Biller. Love Witch is a confounding movie. I can't tell if this movie is The Room or if it's like Tarantino. It's like a completely bizarre pastiche of 70s folk horror tropes, and it feels like a really budget horror movie in the way the acting's very stilted, in a way that feels funny, like it's winking at you, but sometimes I can't tell if it's winking at you. So it's got that fun, campy territory where you're like, oh, there's something very sincere about this movie that makes it endearing. It's a witch who is a serial killer who gets men to fall in love with her and kind of cry themselves to death. And it's very funny. It's got a lot on its mind. It's very weird. And it has some cool folklore medieval elements in it too.
I've heard of the Love Witch, and local theaters and stuff would run it a lot. And I've always in my mind, it's always been kind of on like a Black Dynamite kind of level where it's like it knows what it's doing, but I haven't seen it, so I don't know.
The more I watch it, the more I think it's not doing what we think it is. I don't think it's setting out to be a parody, which makes it all the more interesting. It's so goofy and bizarre and good.
Nice.
In its own special way. Yeah,
Man,
so
I want to watch
those are my favorites.
I want to watch all three of those. Yeah, those sound good. Are those on?
A lot to watch.
Or Valerie? Is Valerie on Criterion?
Valerie's
channel?
Criterion, yeah. So
Okay.
that should be on the channel.
Yeah,
All
got
the
this
Colors of the Dark.
Yeah, go ahead.
All the Colors of the Dark is on Shudder.
Okay.
And then what was the other one?
Love Witch.
Love Witch.
That's on
Love Witch.
Amazon, I think.
That should be a lot of places.
Yeah,
That's
I
a
think
recent
it's
movie
around,
in the last
yeah.
couple of years. Yeah. Mark, you were about to ask.
I'm Valerie curious. Does it have somewhat of a linear narrative?
Not at all.
Not
Not at all.
So
It's very dreamlike. It came from a surrealist novel that kind of built on Slavic folklore.
I'd have to drink
movie-
coffee before that.
Yeah, the movie made it even more surreal. It feels like it makes sense, but it doesn't, if that makes sense. It's
That
kind of
sounds
like
lynching in a way.
yeah,
Okay.
it's held warmly. Like you're watching something that should make sense, but nothing follows logically from the
Yeah.
line.
Yeah.
That sounds awesome.
Okay, I want to check
I love.
that out. It's been on my list for years, so thank you.
Yeah, I'd love to hear what you think.
Yeah, update us. We'll do an update.
Next year for all.
Yeah, we'll do a Valerie and Her Week of Wonders special.
Oof.
All right, well, we are running low on time, so I'll just bypass the next few questions. But I asked the patrons what's scary about folk horror, if it's the best example of daytime horror, if these sometimes are cozy, and if what children's movies of our past, beloved children's movies, weirdly fit the folk horror genre. The examples I gave were like Hocus Pocus, The Witches, Ernest Scared Stupid. A few other people brought up Indiana Jones, The Temple of Doom. Ichabod and Mr. Toad, I thought was a good one. Happy Gaming brought up that one. Ryan Ponder says Scooby-Doo on Zombie Island, don't at me.
Oh, yeah. The best Scooby-Doo.
Yeah. Anyway, let's see here. Choo. I'm just trying to see what the next...
I'm not gonna. Yeah, I can't think of anything from my childhood. So maybe another question from, or unless people have other.
I will agree they're cozy. They're cozy.
Oh,
as
yeah.
hell.
Yeah.
I went on a
Yeah,
marathon,
yeah.
and I haven't been this happy in the past couple months because the past couple months have happened. But
Yeah.
going on a folk horror little mini marathon, it put me in a nice fall mood. Even though there was horrible things happening,
Me too, dude.
There's also singing and dancing and friendship. They're good movies.
Good
OG
landscape shots.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
OG Wicker Man feels nice at parts. Like... and pretty unsettling in other parts, but...
I like what you said. You called it daytime horror. I love that.
Yeah.
It's genius.
I think I heard that phrase mostly in reference to Midsummer, but I think it definitely makes perfect sense. The daytime horror. Let's see, Colt Smith. Never mind. I thought they brought up another example, but nobody wrote that down. Okay, never mind. I'm a little bummed that we ran out of time because Morgan Mahala trolled you, Huber, in such a wonderful way. They gave us a section of a script to enact, to do a table read, to try to entice you to do a certain thing that I've been trying to get you to do for years. I'll read frick it. I'll read an excerpt here if you'll indulge me. All right, so John has spent the entire day losing fights, being extorted, and carrying a grown man around in a backpack. He was supposed to be preparing for a presentation related to his cover job at an industrial piping firm, but has not had a moment to rest. He is visibly wounded and exhausted, and he walks in to deliver a speech mere seconds before being announced to come on stage. Leslie Claret, his boss, says, "And now to explain the core of Donnelly nut plate spacing and cracked reconfiguration, my associate, John Lakeman." And John limps onto the podium to light applause. John Lakeman says, "Hey guys, hey, ready to talk plate processing and residue transport, plate funneling? Why don't we start with joust jams? Hey, why not? Plates and jousts. Can we couple them? Hell yeah, we can. Want to know how? Get this. Proprietary to Macmillan. Only us. Ready? We fit Donnelly nut spacing grip grids and splay flexed brace columns against beam fastened derrick husk nuts and girdle plate jerrys, while plate flex tandems press task apparatus of 10 verti pin plated pan traps at every maiden clamp plate packet. Knuckle couplers plate alternating sprams from the T-nut to SKN to the chim line." And then a stunned European man in the audience goes, "Whoa." Patriot
I'm so lost.
Patriot is a good show.
That's a legit monologue.
Patriot is an amazing show with a horrible title.
Feels like Mamet wrote it.
Yeah, dude, it is. Dude, it's like if Mamet,
So
the Coen
good.
brothers, and
Yes.
Wes Anderson got together to make a spy drama set in Luxembourg and Michigan, is Patriot. And it's a
Mamet.
beautiful
And
television show.
Tarantino. I would throw Tarantino in.
I
Tarantino.
saw one episode. I really liked it.
Have you
haven't
seen
gone
it,
back
Mark?
yet.
Have you watched Patriot?
No,
Oh,
I'm just going off this monologue. This is insane.
Patriot is a TV show on Amazon, and
Yeah, I've
it's
heard of it.
magnificent. Terrible title, makes nobody want to watch it.
Yeah.
Also, Fleabag is perfect. All right,
Okay.
and I would like to contact Ty Cobb. All right, so to end every episode, here we go. We've made it. We're at the end. Thank you all for being here. This has been a hoot.
I need to.
We have the quote challenge by Tokyo Slim.
And should say a reaction shots.
Patriots hit reaction shots. Tokyo Slim. So he furnishes us with quotes, and we try to guess what they're from, and then next month he tells us if we were right.
Shit.
One. Yeah, who knows? I didn't read these, so I don't know. One. What religion can they possibly be learning jumping over bonfires?
Midsummer.
Is it Midsummer? It sounds really familiar. Well, let's go with Midsummer.
Maybe. I don't know.
I'll back you up. That sounds about right. But there's
Yeah,
bonfires in all these movies.
There's bonfires in every one.
Could be the Wicker Man.
Yeah, I think it might be
That's gonna
bad.
be a Nick Cage.
It might be
quote?
bad Wicker Man, new Wicker Man.
Yeah.
This one, we'll all get this one. Wouldst thou like to taste of butter and pretty dress? Wouldst thou like to live deliciously?
The Witch.
That's the witch.
Yeah.
Oh, nope. I know what this one's from. This is murder. Murder! You'll all be guilty, and you're doing it for nothing.
Wicker Man.
That's the Wicker Man.
That's Wicker Man. What did you get the medal for? Cowardice? Or no, what did you get the medal for? Cowardice. There's a period after cowardice. I don't know what this is from. Sounds familiar.
That almost sounds like a Wicker Man remake, but I may be pushing it.
I don't know.
Let's go with it.
Oh my God, this sounds familiar too. I spy with my little eye something that starts with C. Corn.
Children of the...
The corn. Yeah.
We didn't talk about Children of the Corn. That's totally folk horror.
That would
too.
probably count. Yeah. A lot of Stephen King stuff kind of would.
Yeah, totally.
Totally.
Doctor Sleep, Borderline. With
Dude,
that group.
I liked that movie.
Yeah, I did too.
And then I found out that there was a director's cut on HBO that we didn't watch because it's buried under the real version, the regular theatrical version, and I'm pissed.
Sometimes the regular version's better.
I think the director's cut would have been all right, too. I don't know. I liked it.
Yeah, it's such a case to case.
I was ready to live in that
All
movie.
depends.
It's got good vibes.
Ridley Scott famously said, Ian, I know you love Ridley Scott.
Sometimes.
He famously goes,
I like young Ridley Scott, not old new Ridley Scott.
he said, the theatrical cut is the director's cut.
Yeah. All right.
Unhinged.
Thank you all so much. I loved this. Mark,
Yeah, thank you.
first time on the show. Hopefully not the last. I had a real blast. It's good to see you too.
Come back.
I'd love to have
It's
you.
so nice to meet you, Mark.
Yeah, Mark.
Yeah, great meeting you guys.
If you host a drive-in, let me know.
We'll all
Swing
be
on
there.
by.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Seriously.
Are you in LA?
Yeah, I'm in Los Angeles.
Yeah, let's go for it then. We gotta have a drive-in. Yeah.
Once
Guaranteed spectators. Awesome.
once the world is done ending though, and Wayward Cinema kicks off again, I'll definitely let Huber and Matthew know, and we'll show up in droves. I've seen a lot of crazy good movies at Wayward Cinema. Stuff.
Thank you,
It's good stuff.
Matthew, you can only come if you're going to wear that crown.
Okay, that's my wristband.
Yeah.
That's my wristband again. Yeah.
Exactly.
No problem. I'm never taking this off now. I tried. It won't come off.
Yeah.
It's weird.
I can
The
see
only
it
movie
breathing.
I've-
Is that weird?
The only movie I ever saw at a drive-in was Desperado.
Oh, nice.
Ooh.
That's a good drive-in movie.
I saw Blue Velvet a couple days ago at the drive-in.
I saw that Instagram.
That was
post.
intense. That's a weird movie to watch at a drive-in communally, actually.
I'm gonna try to go see Tenet maybe on Sunday at a drive-in. I don't know. I heard it's not very good.
It's fun. It's fun. The drive-in's so great.
Yeah,
Especially when
I've
you
never
can
done
barely
one.
do anything these days.
I've never
it feels
done
like,
one.
oh, Los Angeles still exists. We're still a city halfway. It's nice.
That'll be a weird feeling to remember that, because I certainly don't remember that. All right, patreon.com/easyallies. If you're in the $7 and up tier, you are in the film club. You get to submit for this. You get to see Huber and my's slowly expanding favorite film lists. I think the most recent addition for me was probably Portrait of a Lady on Fire,
One of
which
the
I
best
know you
movies ever
didn't
made.
love, Mark, and I really loved it.
No,
I loved it.
No, not my favorite.
We have some differences maybe that would explain that.
We come together in Wicker Man, and that's what matters.
Yeah,
for this
that's what
show.
matters for this. But anyway, that's our favorite films lists and a few commentaries. And then, part of Patron Party, which we're doing at the end of this month from the 19th to the 24th, culminating in an all-day, 8-hour Twitch marathon. But Wednesday night of that week, Huber and I are going to do a live commentary track with people in the $7 and up tier. It's going to be a hoot and holler. Check that out in a couple weeks. Again, thank you to Matthew.
We're going to
and
do
Mark.
Desperado, Ian.
We'll have to. Maybe we should have a vote. Probably we should have people vote. All right. Anyway, enough ending. Bye.
Everyone, happy Halloween.
Oh yeah, happy.
Yeah, happy Halloween. Spooky season.